TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Series, and it is a pleasure to be joined by the big Valboski, Val Venis. Val, welcome to the shoot interview.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm looking forward to shooting away.
Awesome. Well, let's start at the beginning. Were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Absolutely, I was a wrestling fan growing up. I remember, from as far back as I can possibly remember, I've been a wrestling fan. I remember my grandmother was into it. Ricky Steamboat was one of her favorites of all time. So
wow.
Yeah, I've been a wrestling fan pretty much all my life.
Wow. Who did you enjoy watching when you were a kid?
Obviously, there was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I mean, he was basically your mainstay. Ric Flair was absolutely phenomenal. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Randy Macho Man Savage. There's pull up some other ones here. Mr. Perfect.
Oh, okay.
Was another one that I really loved watching and enjoyed working with. I got an opportunity to work with him once there in Puerto Rico. And so that was definitely one of my favorites.
Excellent, excellent. And is it true that you studied economics before getting into the wrestling business?
It depends what you mean by study. Homeschool on Austrian economics, yes, absolutely. But no, I didn't go to the London School of Economics and study Keynesian economics. Neither do I want to.
And motorcycle racing. Did you do motorcycle racing before wrestling?
Yeah, I did motocross racing pretty much all my life. My family was involved in motorcycles. My dad has always been a big fan of motorcycles and rode all his life. And so, my family was involved in motocross, from time I was a little kid till I was about 18 and got out into the wrestling world.
Cool. So how did you get into the wrestling world?
Well, my last year of high school, I've always loved wrestling. It wasn't something that I believed I could do as a career, but I always loved it. And I was on the high school wrestling team. And I remember my last year of high school, my high school was wrestling against another high school in Ontario. And one of the guys that I wrestled against, he introduced me to Jason Robertson and Dewey Robertson, who started to train me. And they're the ones that got me going on the weekends, almost every week of my last year of high school. And so I'd go to school during the week, and then Friday, as soon as school let out, I'd head down to Hamilton, Ontario, spend the weekend down there training. And then I met another Canadian wrestler by the name of Shane Sewell.
Okay.
And we became a tag team. And we went over after I graduated high school, went over to England, and I wrestled over there for a year. Came back home for a couple of days, and I went down to Arkansas and continued to wrestle as a tag team in Arkansas for about 8 months.
Wow. So when you were in England, did you train at any of the shooting dojos or anything there?
No.
Just
we worked for the British Wrestling Federation run by Brian Dixon.
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun, man. It was a lot of fun being over there. I mean, at that point, I had never been to England before, so it was amazing just to be able to go over there. And I was young and I was ready to go, and I was doing what I loved. I loved professional wrestling. And I forgot to say was, when I went over there, the whole plan was originally to go over there for the summer months and start at Colorado State Aeronautical Science for the fall. And what happened was, when I went over to England for the summer, I fell in love with the business and pushed university off, and I've been wrestling full-time ever since.
Wow. So when you started training, obviously a lifelong wrestling fan, what was the biggest misconception you had about the wrestling business?
I didn't really have a misconception about the wrestling business. I understood what the wrestling business was about. I understood the entertainment aspect of it, and it was something that once I realized that I could do it, I went full steam ahead with it.
Yeah, some guys we've talked to over the years, they say when they started training, they picked it up like that. Some guys said that it took them months to pick it up. How about you?
I picked it up pretty quick. It may have a lot to do with wrestling pretty much all my life with my brother, who is only a year and a half younger than I am. So he made for some good competition. And it may have had something to do with that. I do remember the very first bump I ever took was even before I started training. Now, mind you, when you're on the high school wrestling team, you're taking a lot of bumps on a mat, but it's not real. So I mean, it's rolling bumps, and it's not a real solid thump.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the living room, and my brother and I were daring each other, hey, jump straight up, land flat on your back on the floor. And this was a carpeted floor, but it was concrete underneath. There was no carpet padding or anything like that. It was just a thin carpet on top of concrete. And I said, well, yeah, let's just see what it feels like. And so I remember I crossed my arms and I jumped up, landed flat on my back, and I lost every ounce of wind in my lungs.
Wow.
I jumped up and went, oh my God. And so that was the first and only time at that time that I ever took a bump. And then it was about 2 years later when I went for training as a professional wrestler with Dewey Robertson and Jason Robertson. And they asked you to do that right in the ring, and so I kind of understood what was coming.
Yeah.
Because I remember. And, it knocks the wind out of you. And I remember that very first time clearly because it was something that I did not expect. All the wind, you just go, ooh. And, I clearly remember that.
Wow. So do you have any good missing link stories?
Good missing link stories. Missing link was always a real gentleman. Whenever I was around, I've heard all the wild stories about him and stuff, but I never got to see them. I mean, he was an absolute gentleman around me. He was an amazing guy. He was very talented when it came to teaching the charisma aspect of professional wrestling. His son was much better when it came to the technical aspects of professional wrestling, and so he was definitely a guy to be around. One thing I do remember is while I was wrestling in Puerto Rico, my partner Shane and I, we took some time off and went up to, came back to Canada to run a couple of shows and get our feet wet in the promoting aspect of professional wrestling. So we ran a show in Bancroft, Ontario, and of course the missing link came up, and he was going to be on the show, and my brother was going to wrestle for the very first time. And my brother went out in a red jumpsuit and in a mask, and he was called the Grease Monkey because he's a auto-mechanic, so he called himself the Grease Monkey. And so I went out there and I wrestled my brother, and it was a good match. And then the missing link, who was watching my brother work, when we came back, this was the first couple of matches of the night. When we came back to the locker room, the missing link says, "I'd like to work your brother." And I was like, okay. So my brother actually got to work twice that night and got to work with the missing link, which was a great time for him too. Wow.
Now, I read Missing Link's book, and he talks a lot in there about the problems that he had with drugs over the years. Did you notice any problems during your training or riding with him or anything?
No. Like I said, I've heard all the wild stories about him, but, the years that I was up there and, out of his school, I never saw any of that. Now, that's not to say that, marijuana might not have been around or whatever, or might have been around, whatever the case may be, but I never got to see any of it at that point, no.
Yeah. What are your memories of the early days on the independents?
It's odd. I never really did independence per se. I did more small organization stuff where we're always working full time, and which was, I think it was a plus and a negative. With the independents, I mean, you're generally working the weekends, so you get to recoup from all the bumps, during the week.
Yeah.
When I was working, for example, the British Wrestling Federation, it was my first full-time wrestling job. We're working every single day, sometimes twice a day. Actually, many times twice a day. We do an afternoon show, especially in the summer months, because we do an afternoon show in the at the Butlins camps over in England, and then we do a town show at night. And so it was a full-time job. When we went down to Arkansas, we were wrestling 5-6 nights a week. So it was another full-time job. We went down to Puerto Rico. They were running 5 nights a week, every single week, all year long, and 6 years of doing that. And so it was just a constant full-time job for me. I never really got too much into the independent scene. Mine was more of a small organization career.
Yeah. Being from Canada, did you run into Edge and Christian on the independents at all coming up?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Yes. We kind of all broke in together around the same time. Different trainers, of course. There was Shane Sewell, Edge, Christian, and myself. And what happened was Shane and I took off and worked the small organizations, and Christian and Edge took off and worked independents.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like we started all together in the same place, and then we went off, and Shane and I went to do small organizations. Christian and Edge went and did the independents, and then in 1998, boom, we're right back to Edge and I meant right back up to where we both wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah. So how did you wind up getting into All Japan Pro Wrestling?
I was in Puerto Rico at the time, and a guy by the name of Rex King, who was a wrestler from Well Done at the time, he turned me on to a fellow by the name of Johnny Ace. And Johnny Ace brought me over to All Japan. And went over there for 2 tours. And it was a great time over there. I absolutely loved it. It was amazing.
Yeah. What are your memories of the Babas? Was Giant Baba still alive when you were working over there?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
Giant Baba was still alive. I got a little story there.
Awesome.
Johnny Ace was obviously the booker for the foreign talent and the American guys. And I remember when I went over there, and I was the new guy, and I remember I was working out in the ring, and during the daytime, this is before the doors were opened, and I remember Mr. Baba sitting off by the merchandise, and I remember Mr. Baba pointed at me and took his fingers and did this, like, come here. And so I got out of the ring and I walked over to him, and I remember him telling me to throw left-hand clotheslines instead of right-hand clotheslines. And at the time, I was always throwing right hands. I was okay, and he explained to me why. And then I asked him, I said, hey, is it possible to get an All Japan outfit? And he goes, I see what I can do. I said, okay, thank you, Mr. Bob. I appreciate it. And I went back to the ring and continued working out. After the show that night, we all get on the bus. We all drive to the hotel. And as we get off the bus, Johnny Ace says to me, hey, Shawn, I'd like to talk to you. When you put your bags in your room, come to my room, please. I said, okay. And so I went and put my bags in my room. I went down to Johnny's room, and I said, what's up? He goes, have a seat. So I sat in the chair, and he says, listen, I know you don't understand how things are set up here, but everything's on a ladder basis. If you ever want to talk to Mr. Baba, it's got to be through me. That's what Johnny said to me. And so at the time, I said, oh, really? I didn't know. He just called me over. And he goes, yeah, Mrs. Baba was really pissed. And, of course, now I'm thinking Mrs. Baba's pissed at me. Oh, I'm done here, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, my God. I didn't know. Yeah. So, anyways, the next morning, I didn't sleep at all, and I think, oh no, Mrs. Baba's pissed with me. Yeah, Mr. Baba's the one that called me over. Johnny's telling me I shouldn't talk to him. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And the next morning, I go downstairs and I meet up with Kaya Mossman, who's a long time Japanese talent, even though he's Hawaiian, but I guess you can consider him adopted Japanese now. We were downstairs, and Mrs. Baba told us to come on over to McDonald's, which is right next door, and she bought us breakfast. Never said anything about being pissed at me or anything like that. So I don't know whether that was just a makeup thing or whether Johnny was just trying to give me a restless night or what he was trying to do. But yeah, that was the story. The very first time I ever talked to Mr. Baba, and Johnny kind of made a very restless night for me.
Did you get your gear eventually? Did you get your suit, the All Japan suit?
Yes, I did. I did, absolutely. Yes, I did.
Cool. What do you remember as Stan Hansen?
Oh, Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen is a guy I always wanted to meet. And I remember the very first time I went over to All Japan, I got on the bus, and I'm sitting about 4 or 5 rows from the front of the bus. And we're still at the airport. And Rex King, he's sitting near the back of the bus on the other side. Now, I see Stan Hansen coming out of the airport doors, and I'm like, yes, I'm finally going to get to meet Stan Hansen. This is so awesome. And I remember, now mind you, at the time, Rex and I were going to be tagging. And so Stan Hansen walks up the steps of the bus, looks to the very back of the bus, sees Rex, and he goes, God damn it, Rex, it's too damn early in the tour. You just sit there and keep your damn mouth shut. Now I'm thinking, okay, Stan's pissed off because he sees Rex sitting in the back, and I don't know what's going on there. But I'm his tag team partner. I'm just kind of sinking into my seat, And I thought, oh, so this is just going to be great. Stan Hansen is going to be pissed at me by default.
Right.
Because he's going to be my tag team partner. But it actually worked out well. Stan was a super nice guy. I went up to dinner with him one time. And super nice guy. Worked him a couple times over there. Not in singles, but in tag teams and in 6-mans. And what an incredible guy.
Wow. Some of the guys we've interviewed over the years said his clotheslines were brutal because he was half blind in one eye or something. Do you have any memories of the Stan Hansen lariat?
I can't really complain because I've never been accused of being real light. So, but yeah, no, I never noticed. I mean, he was solid.
Yeah.
But that's the way I always felt. It's not ballet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had no complaints.
Was it a different style for you to adjust to your first couple of matches over there?
Yes. The finishes in Japan were much more intense than what they were over here. Now I remember when I came back to the States, both went back to Puerto Rico and Mexico, and when I first started in WWE, I tried to bring some of those that style of intensity involved in the finishes to my matches. A prime example would be the match I had in 1998 with D'Lo Brown at Madison Square Gardens. Another match was the big blow-off match I had with my old tag team partner Shane Sewell in Puerto Rico. We kind of injected that Japanese intensity into the finishes, and it worked out really, really well.
Wow. Did you watch a lot of All Japan tapes over the years for different finishes and ideas and things like that?
I did a little bit, not a whole lot. I didn't have a whole lot of access to Japanese videotapes at the time. But when I did go over there and I started to learn how their finishes are put together, the reasons they do certain things and the reasons they do not do certain things, and I started to put everything together and inject it into my style. It was something that when I did, I found new favorites. For example, Kenta Kobashi, Juan Akiyama, two of my favorite guys over there, Mizawa. And so these are guys that I really looked at. And when I did try to inject that into my style of wrestling, it was... I think it really improved my working ability inside the ring. And so once I realized that these are guys that I really admired over there, I started to acquire tapes on these guys. One of the guys was Rob, for example. I would call Rob up and say, hey, can you send me some tapes of Kenta Kobashi and Juan Akiyama? And I already did that a few times for me. So that was really cool.
You have any stories on any of those guys? They're legendary in the States now, just all their matches over the years. And
oh, absolutely. Kenta Kobashi and Juan Akiyama?
Yeah.
Not really. I only did the 2 tours over there, so I didn't get I didn't get to know them real well. But the tours I did over there, I really admired their work, and I got to know them more through videotapes than I did in person. But yeah, those were 2 guys. I mean, I stole the double knee Russian leg sweep that Kenta Kobashi does, and the swing out power bomb that Juan Akiyama does.
Yeah.
So these, and I called the double knee Russian leg sweep the Kobashi. If I was in the ring, I'd say Kobashi. Guys would understand that. Hey, I'm going to throw the double knee Russian. And so yeah, those are 2 guys that I really love to watch and learn from over there.
Awesome. What do you remember of your trips to Mexico?
Oh, Mexico was great. Mm-hmm. It was great. I worked with Raul de Jalisco, and we built up the big match. It was mask versus mask, and so we built that up, and it was great. It was awesome. I had such a good time down there. I met my wife down there, and in Mexico City, it was the owner of CMLL, Paco, is the one that introduced me to my wife. And yeah, I got a lot of memories down there. I also got a lot of brain cells bouncing around Mexico City.
Was it hard to adjust to working with a mask?
It was at first, but like everything, you get accustomed to it, and
yeah,
you don't even realize it's on after a while.
Yeah. And did you know Spanish before going down there, or?
The time I spent in Puerto Rico, I learned the basics. The problem is in Puerto Rico, the majority of people speak English, so
yeah.
You weren't forced to speak Spanish. When I did go to Mexico City, I had to learn Spanish. And so, yeah, I started studying every single morning I actually had a routine from 8 to 10. I had a professor come over to the lobby of the hotel, and I'd be studying Spanish for 2 hours while I was drinking coffee.
Wow.
By 10:30, I was in the gym working out, come back, have some lunch, have a little bit of rest, and go work. And so that was my routine every single day down there, pretty much. So, yeah, I learned Spanish pretty good down there.
Wow. At what point in your career, and maybe it was when you were in the WWE, did you think to yourself did you get that confidence, the 100% confidence that you knew when you got in there you could go?
I think it was after my second tour in Japan was when I really felt like, you know what, I've got a rock solid foundation that's just going to continue to be built upon, and I can go. And so it was after the second tour of Japan where I think I felt comfortable enough to say that I've got enough of a foundation now to really go inside the ring.
Yeah. Chris Jericho tells of a crazy road story in his book about the time that when he was wrestling in Mexico. Do you have any crazy road stories from down there?
I don't have a whole lot of crazy road stories down there, and I think one of the things in Mexico that was great for me was I was working with the top guy down there. Now, Raul de Jalisco isn't the most technical wrestler in the world. However, his charisma and his persona, he's over like Rover. Yeah. And so it was very, very easy to work with him down there. And because I was working with the top guy, I was pretty much flown everywhere. So do you want to get that one? Or?
That's not me. I think that's you.
Oh, that is?
Yeah, it's not me.
Can we stop again?
Yeah, absolutely.
Last question again.
Yeah. Do you have any good road stories about your time in Mexico?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple of road stories. And going back to working with the top guy down there, all that time, I was flown pretty much everywhere I wanted to go, whether it be Acapulco, where the other guys would have to take a bus, whether it was Cancun, Monterrey, whatever the case may be. And the only place I had to ever drive to was, I'm trying to remember the name of the town now. It started with a P. I can't remember the name of the town, but I remember it was only about an hour and a half from Mexico City. And I remember we were driving up there. I was with in a van, and Apollo Dantes was one of the guys in the van. And I remember after the show, we stopped in at a gas station. I went into the gas station and got myself a Diet Coke and an apple. I came back out into the van. Apollo Dantes gets in the van, and we both got brown paper bags. And we close the door, and the driver takes off, and Apollo pulls out a beer, cracks it open, starts drinking it. So I'm looking at him. I pull out my Diet Coke, pull out my apple. And I remember Apollo puts the beer down, he looks at me, and he goes, "A Diet Coke and an apple? You're not a real wrestler." That was something that sticks into my head to this day, just the way he said it. He was a great guy, and that was just, it was perfect timing. He had to be there. It was really cool. One of the craziest things that happened to me, and it got me real angry, Mike Lazansky, the famous Mike Lazansky, he would come down to Mexico every once in a while and do a few shows here and there. He would have a personal driver by the name of Arturo. And Arturo was a guy that had a Suburban, and he ran his own business with his Suburban, where he would sit in an area called Zona Rosa, which is a real touristy area in Mexico City. And he would, say to the tourist, "Hey, do you want a ride to the ruins, to the pyramid ruins? Do you want to ride here? Do you want to ride there? You can have the Suburban for 4 hours, and I'll drive you everywhere you want to go." So he was marketing himself to the tourist. Well, whenever Mike Lazansky came down, he would go and find Arturo, and he'd say, "Arturo, you're with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week." And so he had Arturo as a driver and Arturo's Suburban to drive him wherever he wanted to go. And whatever hotel Mike Lazansky was going to stay in, the room next door was Arturo's. And so I remember I flew from Mexico City to, can't remember the name of the town, but I remember I flew into the town, and I slept on the flight over there. So I didn't realize how long the flight was. To me, it was about an hour, whatever it was, but it was actually longer than that. It was actually a 3-hour flight. But I flew into that town. I get to the arena that night. I do the show. The next morning, I have a flight to go back to Mexico City. And Mike Lazansky's there. And Lazansky says, "Hey, drive back to the city with me tonight. We'll have a good ride." And I said, "Well, how far is it to drive?" And he says, "It's only 6 hours." And I'm like, "All right, I partied up with you for 6 hours, but Turtle's driving." So we get in the Suburban, and 12 hours later, we roll into Mexico City.
Wow.
And it was, needless to say, I was quite angry at Mike Lazansky at that point. Now I got over it pretty quick. Mike Lazansky's like a walking home entertainment center, so you can't stay mad at him forever, or you couldn't stay mad at him forever. But at that point, I wanted to just strangle him.
So how did you wind up making contact with the WWE? Did they contact you? Did you contact them? Did you have a facilitator?
Savio Vega, Miguel Perez, and Victor Quinones were all part of the WWE at the time. Victor Quinones was basically kind of like a talent scout, and so Victor Quinones had WWE fly me up from Mexico City to Des Moines, Iowa, where I did a tryout. Then I went back to Mexico City. And then a few months later, WWE invited me up to what would be their very first camp. And so I went up to their camp, and that's where Edge and I hooked back up again. Mm. And it was at the end of that camp, I signed with WWE. And we signed with WWE with the notion that I could finish up in Mexico City. And so it was great. I stayed in Mexico City for another 6 months, and I just kept doing, I did a few vignettes that would run, I guess, about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was wrestling in Mexico City, and then I would do only TVs for WWE for the next 6 months, and I'd go back down to Mexico City and continue wrestling down there until I did the big blow-off match, which is mask versus mask, and then I started with WWE full-time after that.
Gotcha. So what were your initial impressions of Vince?
I didn't know what to make of Vince at first. I do know that once I started to understand how his company operated as it pertained to being talent, I started to pay more attention to things he would do, things he would say, how he would say things. The one thing I will say is Vince is a workaholic. I mean, that guy just goes nonstop, and I admire that when I can see someone not only have a passion for something like he does, but put the effort forth in order to make that certain thing succeed. And he will put effort into 100 different things, and 99 of them will fail, and that one that survives, he'll run full steam ahead with it. And it's incredible to see his passion is never deterred by the 99 failures.
Yeah.
When he gets that one winner. And it's amazing to see him push all these different aspects of the business. And then when he finds the one that's going to take off, he jumps on it. And to me, that's admirable for sure.
Yeah. Before you went to the WWE, did you ever talk to ECW or WCW at all?
I did talk to WCW. And they actually brought me in for tryout. This was when I was working in Mexico City, WWE, through Victor Quinones. I said, hey, can you come to Des Moines, Iowa? Now, mind you, that was 7 weeks in advance. And so that was good. I can call Paco in Mexico, my boss in Mexico, and say, hey, I need these couple of days off 7 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Well, the following week, Terry Taylor from WCW calls me up and says, hey, can you come out to Cincinnati this coming Monday? And there's no way I could do that. Well, whatever he did, whether he called Paco or he had one of his guys call Paco, whatever the case was, I told him no. They went and called Paco. Paco said, just take the Monday off and go. Just make sure you're back here by Tuesday night. And I wasn't too happy with that at the time. I mean, Paco's my boss. 7 weeks advance notice is plenty for a couple of days off. But 4 days notice, that was already a bad strike, in my eyes. And so I fly up to Cincinnati, already angry, and I do the shot, and I meet Eric Bischoff there. We just had a couple of words, that was it. And then I flew back to Mexico City, and I remember when they said, I remember Terry had asked me, what I thought about my tryout. And I said, well, I thought everything was good, blah, blah, blah. But I really didn't appreciate the fact that, you guys went over my head, went to Paco and, forced him to, give me a Monday off 4 days in advance. I mean, I was already advertised for that show. So that was already a bad strike. And I really didn't want anything to do with WCW at the time after that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I didn't want to maybe in the future, but at that point I was just, that's just not right. I'm not gonna deal with that. I already had the tryout with WWE in 7 weeks at that point. I'm happy with Mexico. I got a few tours to Japan. I got Puerto Rico I can fall back on. So I was in a comfortable position.
Yeah.
And so, I think solely because of that, I just didn't want anything to do with WCW at that point in time.
Yeah. How about ECW? Nothing?
Never got in contact with ECW.
Okay.
There was, between Puerto Rico, Mexico, Japan, it was just, there really was no time at that point.
Yeah. So when you came into the WWE, who came up with the name Val Venis?
Vince Russo and Vince McMahon. I don't know whether they watch Boogie Nights or what the case may be. Jerry Diggler, Val Venis kind of makes sense. But I remember when Vince McMahon called me down to Mexico City. He says, I have this character I want to throw by you. And if you feel comfortable with it, let us know. And we can build it. If you don't feel comfortable with us, let us know. Because if you don't feel comfortable with it, it's not going to work. And that made perfect sense to me. Well, that's when he told me, now, the character's name is Val Venis. The last name is spelled Venis. Still didn't really clue into where he was going with it. He says, now, Val Venis is a film star. So I said, okay. He says, actually, Val Venis is an adult film star. And I'm like, yeah, twist my arm.
Right.
And so he says, I don't want your answer right now. Sit down for 24 hours, call me back, let me know if you want to do it. And so I sat on it 24 hours already knowing that, you don't really need to twist my arm to do an adult film star character.
Did Vince also come up with the Hello Ladies, or was that you?
No, that was actually me. I came up with the Hello Ladies gimmick. We were doing the vignettes. And the second vignette, the first vignette, there was no Hello Ladies in the very first one. The second one, we started it out with Hello Ladies. And I just felt like I needed something to flow into the script. And Hello Ladies kind of seemed to fit the bill. But at that point in time, I didn't really think that would become the tag.
Yeah.
But after that second vignette was done and we watched it back, that's when I realized that that's a great tag right there. Hello Ladies.
Yeah.
We went with it right there.
Wow. And
put it in every vignette after that second one.
Wow. And of course, I would imagine you had to do some kind of research for the character.
We did more research in the names of the adult films. For example, Shaving Ryan's Privates.
Yeah.
So we did definitely do a lot of research in how the names were manipulated into titling different videos. Absolutely.
Wow. And you got to do a skit early on with adult film actress Jenna Jameson.
Yes, that I did. And it was kind of cool. We went up to Bruce Pritchard's home up in Connecticut, and we did a skit behind a bush. We did a skit in his hot tub. There was a couple other areas we did skits, but for some reason they didn't. They cut her out of the vignettes.
Huh. Wow. Was she cool? Was she cool to work with? Yeah,
she was cool to work with. Now, mind you, she was there with her boyfriend as well at the time.
Yeah.
So who knows what she was like with her boyfriend there. But yeah, she was cool while she was there with her boyfriend.
So when you started wrestling there, you said yourself earlier in the shoot interview that you call yourself a little snug in the ring. Did any of the guys there have any issues with you early on? Say, wow, this guy's a little too snug for me.
No, not really. No, I don't think I was ever stiff.
Yeah.
It was just a solid snug. It was never unsafe. It was never. I never had anybody really complain about it.
Yeah. The reason I asked, a couple of the guys that we've done interviews with that came from Japan, Vader comes to mind. He said when he got there, a couple of guys were kind of upset with him for working the style that he did. And he's like, hey, I was just working the All Japan style. So.
Yeah, see, for me, I just didn't mind it. I mean, I understood the business is not ballet.
Yeah.
And for me, as long as it's not going to hurt anyone, bring it.
Right. Memories of your TV debut, which I think was against Scorpio?
Yes.
Yeah, memories of that.
To me, I thought that was a heck of a match.
Yeah.
To me, we were injecting that Japanese style into the match. And I think it was something at that point in time that the majority of people in the WWE office were not used to. They were used to seeing a guy coming in his debut and just squashing. And we didn't do that. We actually went out there and had a match. And I remember Jim Ross, when he was commentating that match, saying, this may be an upsetting day for the Big Valboski if he is he could very well lose this match. And I remember we were going back and forth with that match. And I think that was a different way to come into the WWE rather than just being a guy that's going to come in there and squash and get built up. I was going to come in there with a guy that was going to entertain and put on a match every single time.
Yeah.
No matter who it's with.
Did you get a good reaction from The Office after your first couple matches?
Yes. Yeah, I got a good reaction from The Office, yes.
And a famous angle that people remember you for, the Kaientai angle.
Yes.
Memories of the angle and working with those guys for a while, too, in the feud.
Mr. Yamaguchi-san.
Yes.
I have a bone to pick with him. Actually, Mr. Yamaguchi-san's cool, but he almost really did decapitate the Big Valboski. I remember specifically we had this big chopping board. It was like a table chopping board. And the whole idea was they're going to drag me through and handcuff me up to the pipe. And you have a chopping board that's about that wide. And I remember when they put me up in that thing, the camera's behind us, okay? Now, my complete package is on top of this chopping board. So even though you have this much of a chopping board and there's this much of it with my package, okay, maybe this much. Still, you have that much clearance. You can hit over here and the camera is not going to know the difference.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and I'm struggling and he goes up and he goes wham that far. It was I freaked out. It was the scariest thing I've ever had happen to me. And he said that as he brought the sword down, he really was just in the moment. He wasn't paying attention. Yeah, if he wasn't paying that much more.
Wow.
God dang, yeah, that was something that kind of freaked me out, and that was my very first angle too. So it almost was not a very good angle.
Wow, my heart would have sank.
Yeah, my heart did sink.
So, what are your memories of matches with those guys, Taka and Funaki?
Those guys can go. They really turned up my my cardio, and I remember I had the one after another, all three of them, one night there, and it was a match with all three of them, and so that was the first time I've ever done a match like that, where it's just beat one, then beat the second one, and then go for the third one, and actually have a match with everyone as we go along, and so yeah, that was definitely a test of my cardio.
Yeah, absolutely. So for you, spending all those years in the business in England and Mexico and Canada, what's it like to now be a WWE superstar, be on TV all around the world? And how did it change your life and your mentality?
I think more than anything, just the fact that I made it to WWE was a huge accomplishment for me. Because you have to remember, back when I first started, I never actually believed I could do it as a career. And it wasn't until, halfway through the summer in England that I actually understood that, hey, I can really do this. And so to go from never believing that you could actually do wrestling as a career to becoming a WWE superstar and becoming the Intercontinental Champion, the European Champion, I mean, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It's some of the best times of my life. I mean, I made some really good friends. Test, God rest his soul, A-Train, two guys I became really close friends with. And just some of the best times of my life.
Wow. So when you first got there, was there any kind of a rib or initiation that any of the vets put you through during your first couple of weeks?
No, not really. No, it was the one guy that used to rib everybody, but he got me one time really good, was Owen Hart. Mm. And I remember we were at the Marriott right across the street from right across the road from the St. Louis airport. And so I remember we flew into St. Louis. The whole crew flew into St. Louis. Probably got there about 7 a.m. So we've all been up about 4:30 a.m. to fly into St. Louis. So my plan was, because I was dead tired, was to go across the road from the St. Louis airport, check into the Marriott, go to sleep, go eat, go to the gym, go to the arena. And so get my bags from baggage claim, get the rental car. We drive across the road, and going to the Marriott. Well, by the time I get in the Marriott lobby, a lot of the other boys are already in line waiting to check in. And there's lots of fans there. And so all these fans are saying, hey, can you sign this? Can you sign that? As we're waiting in line. So we're signing and signing. This one guy comes up and he's got a stack of Val Venis pictures like this. He says, hey, Val, can you sign these? And I'm like, no, I'm not signing all those. I'll sign one for you. And that was it. And he left and I kept signing for the other kids and stuff. And then I checked in and I grabbed my bags and I went up to my room and I got undressed and I climbed into bed. And just as I was starting to doze off, my phone rings. So I pick up the phone, and he goes, hey, Val, you going to come down here and sign these pictures? And I'm like, what are you talking about signing these pictures? He goes, you told me you'd come back down here after put your bags up in your room. I never told you anything. Now I'm starting to remember. It's this guy with a stack of pictures. I said, dude, first of all, I told you, no, I'm not signing those pictures for you. Second of all, I don't appreciate people calling my room when I'm trying to sleep. And so I hang up. Well, he immediately calls back. He goes, you better get your ass down here. You don't know who I am. I'm a big man. You won't get by me. I went, you mother. Slammed the phone down, threw my clothes on, beelined it out the door. Didn't wait for the elevator. Just went as fast as I could down the steps. I mean, I wanted just to beat the snot out of this guy. Yeah. And I go running into the lobby. The lobby's completely empty, except for Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett, who are sitting on a closed bar stools. Like, the bar's closed, but the stools are there. They're sitting on these bar stools, sitting there talking amongst each other. And I said, hey, did you guys see a guy with the long, dark, scriggly hair and a bunch of Val Venis pictures? They're going, no, we didn't see anybody here. And then Jeff says, oh, wait a minute. I think I saw one guy just run out the front door right before he came down here. So I went running out into the parking lot. I'm looking for this guy. Son of a bitch. Come back in. I go back up to my room and I crash on out. And then after Owen Hart passed away, and this is going back, not going back, it's probably about 2 or 3 months after Owen passed away, Edge and I were getting ready to do a show in Canada, in Toronto, called Off the Record with Michael Landsberg. And while we're sitting on set, getting ready to do that show, we're talking about Owen Hart and stuff. And then Edge looks over and he goes, remember that time in St. Louis when you wanted to kill that guy? That one you signed the pictures? And I was like, yeah. He goes, that was Owen.
Wow.
And then I remember Owen and Jeff sitting there in the bar stools. And I remember when I was getting ready to check in and I told this guy that, no, I'm not going to sign your pictures. Owen was standing right behind me, waiting in line, and it all made sense. And I was like, that son of a bitch. So he got me good on that one. He really got me good.
Oh, man. Well, you started talking a little bit there about a fan story. How crazy did it get with fans in the late 90s, early 2000s when WWE was just at the peak of its business?
You know, the fans with WWE were awesome. I mean, the fans with WWE are amazing. I mean, the majority of them are respectful, but they're passionate and they're excited. And I think that's what makes WWE what it is. And that is the epitome of professional wrestling. It really is. And it's because of the fans. And a lot of it has to do with the genius that is Vince McMahon creating a product that people can be passionate about. Yeah. So yeah, it's the fans are just amazing. Yeah.
And a lot of the guys talk how it's so different now because you have all the Facebooks and the MySpaces where you can actually talk to wrestlers where, when we grew up, it was impossible to meet a wrestler. Now you can just send them an email.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, technology's changed everything.
Yeah.
People can become as accessible as they want to become in this day and age. And it's all because of the internet. Thanks, Al Gore. Appreciate it.
What are your memories of matches with Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Steve Austin was a machine. And I remember the one match we had, he was, if it was a house show match, I remember we did there was specifically one 6-man that we did. It was Rock, Austin, myself, Shamrock, Bob Holly, Chris Jericho. And I remember it was a house show match, and we had a lot of fun in that match. I remember a Raw match I had one-on-one with Steve Austin, and that's where he became Steve Austin. I mean, that was another test on my endurance. he's go, 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 go inside that ring. And that's one thing that I really noticed with him. Steve Austin, to me, was never the greatest wrestler in the world. He did very basic things. But the basic things he did do, he did well. To me, it was his intensity. And it wasn't intense as in throw as many punches as fast and as hard as you can. It was intensity where it was just a constant go, 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 go. There was never any rest. And to me, it made it very, very exciting.
Yeah. And Kurt Angle, you wrestled Kurt Angle quite a bit there.
Yeah, I wrestled Kurt a few times. And he's another guy on that same level as Austin. He just goes, 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 goes. Now, one thing with Kurt Angle that I will say, I'm a big believer in selling. And that's one aspect that, and everybody works their own way. But for me, I love the selling aspect of the game, making people believe in something. And there were certain things that I'd watch Kurt Angle do, and I'd be like, for example, I remember one time Eddie Guerrero hit him with the frog splash, and Kurt Angle would kick out, and literally within 5, 6, 7 seconds of kicking out, Eddie would get up and just circle around. And as he circles around, I remember Kurt would hook the ankle, stand right up on his feet as Eddie would drop down to his face and he'd be giving the ankle out. You just took a 5-star splash, or in his case, the frog splash. I mean, to me, there's more psychology involved in that. And yes, it's kind of neat from a fan aspect to see you just jump right up and into something. But psychologically, it just didn't do it for me. And so there were certain things that Kurt would do that I'd kind of, I'd shun on. Like, why isn't he selling his ribs or something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And little things like that. But overall, Kurt is one of the best in the business. I mean, he truly is. He does, what he does amazingly well. He's courageous. I mean, doing that moonsault off the top of the cage was something I'll never forget. I was like, whoa. Right. And but there are little things that I think, and this is where I believe it comes from, the selling aspect and the psychological aspect of the wrestling game is the years I spent in England, in Puerto Rico, in Mexico, and in Japan. And I think that's why the selling aspect is so ingrained into my work. And of course, Kurt never had that. He went into developmental WWE and then went into WWE.
Yeah.
And so he never really got into having the selling aspect ingrained into his work. And so that kind of shows. But I mean, the fans, I'm sure the majority of fans don't notice that. They get excited when he pops up and grabs that ankle. But for me, that psychological aspect to the wrestling game is very, very important.
Yeah. How did you develop your promos, by the way, when you got up there?
It was just trial and error.
Yeah.
It was just trial and error. Getting out there and just doing it night after night. Now, a lot of the different double mind jokes that I would do, 50% would come from me.
Yeah.
I would say another 40% would come from Al Snow, and another 10% would come from the WWE writers. Al Snow was a tremendous resource for grabbing double mind jokes.
Yeah. Wow. Because I'm imagining, when you're in England, Mexico, Japan, you're not doing many promos back then, or were you?
Puerto Rico. Every single week.
There you go.
We're doing the promos every single week. Mexico, not so much. When I started to learn Spanish a little more, we did a little more. And I'm going to say the last 6 or 7 months that I was in Mexico, I was doing quite a bit. Japan, of course, we didn't do any promos except when we came back from the match, but it was all in English. And, it was just all Japanese style, just yelling and screaming in the camera.
Yeah.
There was no... There was no if, and, why, or how about it. It was just, we're not coming, blah, 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 blah. Whereas Puerto Rico, there was always a story behind what we were doing. In Mexico, there was a story behind what we were doing. And of course, in WWE, there's always a story behind what everybody does. Yeah.
Did you have the freedom to improvise in WWE, or were you given script word for word?
We're given script word for word at the beginning. And then later on, we could just be given points, and then we could improvise, and just as long as we got those points in, we could go wherever we wanted to go.
Gotcha. What do you remember of your early matches with Savio Vega in WWE?
I didn't really get to work with Savio Vega all that much. Now, there were a couple of times in some house shows, and we did a couple of things here and there, but Savio was always a great worker. I mean, he was brought up around the business, and all his years in Puerto Rico. I mean, he's so easy to work with, and he's so talented. He's just he really he's one of the guys that you can look to and say, oh, I understand why he does that. When you watch him, things start to click, and you go, oh, okay, I understand why that's done this way. He was a guy you could always look to and learn.
Yeah. I don't know what stories you can actually share on camera, but just having the Val Venis gimmick, you have to have some crazy female wrestling fan stories.
Oh, yeah. There was, back then I wish I wasn't so principled, but I really was. And, but there were a lot of, especially in the early years. I mean, from 98 till 2002, 2003, I mean, you could have your pick of the litter with the women. And, but at that time I was getting more into the party lifestyle where, all I wanted to do is just, go out with Test and A-Train and party it up and have a good time. And if it wasn't for Test and A-Train actually making the night times a lot of fun, being out and just dancing, and Test wouldn't dance, he'd just stand there and never break cool mode. But A-Train and I would go out, and we'd be out on the dance floor with our hands lit up like Christmas trees, and dancing away to rave music, and it was good times. It was good times, definitely.
Awesome. What are your memories of the angles you did with Ryan and Ken Shamrock?
Ken Shamrock is another he's a nutty guy. And when I mean nutty, I mean he is super intense, but in a way that's explosive. And working with him in the ring was a lot of fun, because Ken was the first MMA guy that I really saw get certain aspects of the wrestling game. And what he brought to the game was explosive intensity that would come out of nowhere. And it really changed the way his matches went. And to work inside those matches was amazing. I mean, it was a different way of making fans stand up and cry, laugh, stand there in shock and not saying anything. It was a different way of controlling the audience, and it was a learning experience for me to work with Ken Shamrock.
Wow. You were always known in the WWE for being in impeccable physical conditioning. How hard was it to stay disciplined to keep that kind of regimen, and what was your diet like?
Oh, it really was not hard at all. I mean, I've always loved working out. Working out has been a part of my life since I was 14, 15 years old. So I mean, it's on the road. It's a little different because your time's limited.
Yeah, and
you got to try and find the time to find a local gym in that town, get to that gym, get to the tanning bed. At the same time, still getting food, quality food. And you get quality food at Waffle House. There's nothing stopping people from going into Waffle House and saying, "Hey, give me 6 egg whites and some wheat toast."
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of being disciplined and not sleeping in. I mean, you only got so much time. Being in the WWE, I started to realize that the hours in the day went by real fast. There was just never enough time during the day to do everything you wanted to do.
Wow. What was the longest stretch of time that you were on the road before you got a chance to come home?
Oh, God. Now, are you just with WWE, or you mean in my career?
WWE.
In WWE? Oh. Well, I think it was the first year I was in WWE, the first 2 years. I mean, we were doing, 10, 12, 14, 20 days on the road at a time. And then come home for 3 or 4 days, sometimes 2 days, and then back out on the road again for another huge chunk of time. It was, I'm going to say 1.5 years, maybe 2 years after I started, they switch it to a set schedule where they do Friday, Saturday, Sunday, house show. Monday you do TV, and then you go home on Tuesday, and you had Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday off. So that made it a little easier, absolutely. But those first year and a half, 2 years that I was in WWE, it was intense, but you didn't really notice it because it went by so quick. There was always something to do, so you didn't really notice that you were on the road that long until the last few days of the tour, when you knew you only had a few more days before you go home and wash your clothes.
Yeah.
Before you had to go back out again. That's when the days started to feel like they'd go on forever.
Wow. What are your memories of your team with Godfather?
Oh, Godfather was a trip. He was great. We had such a good time. He's awesome. I love Godfather. It was amazing. I remember one time we were in Philadelphia, and we had been doing house show in this town, house show in that town, house show in this. So we were on tour, and we got into Philadelphia and went out there as a tag team, and he goes, "What's up, Pittsburgh?" And everybody goes, "Boo!" And they were just cheering us. And I remember he puts the microphone out, looks over, and he goes, "What town are we in?" I said, "Philadelphia." He goes, "I'm just joking. What's up, Philadelphia?" And he picked it up, and everybody started cheering. It was great. Oh, he was awesome like that. He was really, really cool. There was just, he was fun. He was a lot of fun to work with.
Rumble, the one that Vince wrestled in, where he did the whole thing where he was wrestling Austin. It was one of Vince's first wrestling matches in '99.
I vaguely remember it.
Okay, so you didn't really have any interaction with Vince in the Rumble or anything?
No, I don't believe I did.
Okay.
I mean, I might have. I remember having a few interactions with him around that time, but I don't know if it was in that Rumble or not. I can't remember.
Yeah. How approachable was Vince during the time you were there? Was he? Some of the guys say that he's real approachable, and some of them say not.
Yeah, no, he was very approachable. Anytime I wanted to talk to him about something, he was available. He might not be available right at that minute. But yeah, he would say, "Hey, come by my office, after the show, or meet me here in an hour or two," or So he was definitely available whenever you want to talk.
What are your memories of working with Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara?
To me, they're fantastic writers, and I could be wrong. But the way I saw it when they were writing is everybody on the card was involved in a story. Everybody from top to bottom. I mean, Crash Holly was a bigger star than Goldberg at one point. And he was on Heat at the point, And so, but the reason was because he had a story. I mean, everyone was involved in a story. And it seemed like when Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara left, it seemed like a lot of the stories started to disappear, and it was only if you're in a top spot where you're involved in an intense storyline. And obviously competition has a lot to do with that. I mean, we were competing with another company that possibly could threaten to put WWE out of business at the time. So, I could say it was the reason everybody was involved in the storyline because it was an absolute necessity due to the fact we had some serious competition.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that was because of Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara. Now, when they left and they went over to WCW, I think Vince's downfall was the fact that he's such a great writer, but he wanted to be in front of the camera, which isn't a bad thing. But I don't think in this business you can do both and be successful at it. And I think in WWE, Vince McMahon had the chain around Vince Russo. Every time Vince would push that envelope up, Vince McMahon would be there just to tug it down just a tad. And I think that kept everything in check, and it was a perfect balance. I think when he left and went to WCW, not only did our storylines shrink in numbers in WWE, but I think WCW, their storylines were solely focused on the ones which Vince Russo was involved in himself.
Yeah.
And so, WCW and WWE with the storylines shrinking in numbers. And I think that contributed to the downfall. Needless to say, that competition, I think the competing companies really created sparks within a fan's own life. I mean, I'm going to turn to WCW tonight, and then I'm going to flip over and see what's going on Raw. And I think it was I think it was an era that can never be duplicated. Not to say that it can't, but it's going to be very difficult to duplicate that era. And I think competition makes everything better. And when WCW was competing against WWE at the time, and Vince Russo and Ed Ferraro were in WWE, it was both companies had to be on top of their game and produce just an amazing product.
Yeah.
And hey, cheers to competition.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your memories of your first WrestleMania?
My first WrestleMania was, it's like a fog. It came and went so fast.
Huh.
I remember when we were going in my very first WrestleMania, it felt like it was taking forever to get there. And then all of a sudden, boom, and I'm looking behind me. WrestleMania came and went. At that point in time, it was just, everything was moving so fast.
Yeah. What are your memories of matches over the years with The Rock?
Rock. Rock's great. I remember one time, we're doing a house show, and we're working back and forth, and he says, Val, put me in a hold. So I remember I snap-mared him, crossed his left leg over his right knee, hooked it with my right foot, took his arm in his head and cranked it, twisted it around like a pretzel. I said, how's this hold? Well, he can't fight his way out of it. There's no way to. And so that was the intent was to put him in a hole. He said, put me in a hole. He didn't say what hole. So instead of just going into a normal chin lock where he could fight out of it, I was going to put him in a hold where, hey, I got the Rock down. There's nothing he could do.
Yeah.
So I put him in this little pretzel hold. And I go, how's this hold? He goes, get me the hell out of this hold! And I remember Pat Patterson was at the back door, right looking down the aisle there, and he was laughing. It was so funny. And I wouldn't let him out for about 45 seconds. That finally I just let him down, started jaw jacking the referee, because there was no way he could fight out of it. Theoretically, it was a stupid hold to put him in because you need to put a guy in a hold where the fans can get with the guy to work up out of it. Well, Rock wasn't getting out of this hold.
Yeah. So did you have a fun time working with him?
Yes. Yeah. He was a lot of fun. He was very intense, very charismatic, and you could feel the energy. To go out into the ring where the Rock was in and to hear the fans back him up. And actually, what surprised me was I went out to that ring thinking that the fans were back. Now, mind you, when he went out, the fans just exploded. And I remember, oh man, so I'm going to be a total heel-list. But I was surprised. A lot of the fans were backing me up in that match. But just the fact that they exploded so much when he came out it was amazing. And, Austin, I remember standing behind the stage during a couple of different Raws, and the glass would break. And just to watch an entire arena it was just amazing. Just the power. It was intoxicating. To have the power to make the fans do that kind of thing. To have the fans create that much energy in the arena, to have the power to make the fans create that much energy inside the arena is just intoxicating.
Wow. What are your memories? Didn't you team with Nicole Bass once?
Yeah. I was a little disappointed with Nicole Bass. When I first met her, I thought she was all right. She was cool. She seemed to want to learn. We got in the ring with her a few times. Tried to show her a couple of different things. She just seemed gawky. Didn't seem like she would ever catch on, and really she didn't. And but hey, not everybody's going to be able to understand why some things are done.
Yeah.
And she was one of those people. And not just how and why some things are done, but actually how to perform to a certain standard. And she just didn't pick it up. What really disappointed me was I was called into court one time when she was trying to sue the WWE. And they put me on the stand and asked me, basically she was let go because she just wouldn't catch on.
Yeah.
And I guess she tried to say that there was sexual abuse going on and all this kind of stuff. And so they put me on the stand and they asked me if I worked with her, and I said yes. Did you find she was improving? And I said no. And she would never look at me. I was looking right at her when I was on the stand, and she just kept her head looking down. She would never even look at me. And it just, to me, that's just, I mean, she's a liar.
Yeah.
She's an absolute downright liar. And she tried to use the system at taxpayers' expense in order to take money out of Vince's pocket. And I mean, that's just, it's criminal in my mind. I mean, to me, we should get to a legal system where in civil suits, the loser pays.
Yeah.
To me, that would solve a lot of problems. Of course, I don't think the Bar Association will accept that, but especially in people such as Nicole Bass's case, that's definitely a rule that needs to be implemented.
Yeah. Speaking of lawsuits, were you kind of surprised to see Sable back in the WWE after they had that whole lawsuit years back?
No, I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, the fact was it would be shocking to see her back. Vince is into shock value.
Yeah.
And I understood that. And so it was something that, I wasn't surprised. I was taken back when she came back, definitely. But no, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. Had she changed at all from...
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, Sable was always cool. You know, I remember one time I rode with her and Mark Merrill, and they were both really cool. And I worked with her a couple of times, and I always thought Sable was cool. Now, that's not to say she didn't get a big head. You know, I've heard the stories from the other divas and stuff, but you got to remember, I mean, divas talk a lot of crap too. You got to take what they say with a grain of salt. Now, that's not to say that everything they say is crap.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it may be true, but I mean, to me, it's whatever they say is whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Who were your favorite traveling partners?
Test and A-Train.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha. What do you remember as a match with Mick Foley?
Mick Foley was a great guy to work with. I remember when Mick approached me with this stealing his Socko idea. And at first I thought it was nutty and there was no way it was going to work. But working with Mick, he actually made it work. And he's very talented at taking ridiculous ideas and making them workable. And to me, that taking a ridiculous idea and being able to make that idea work is entertaining as hell. And so that's one thing I learned from Mick Foley, was not to just look at an idea and say, that's just an absolutely ridiculous idea. Forget that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take a ridiculous idea and make it work if you do it right. And Mick Foley was a master of that. And that's one thing that I definitely learned from Mick Foley was, hey, don't discount the ridiculous ideas.
Yeah. What do you remember of wrestling the Mean Street Posse?
Yeah, you know what? I really don't have a lot of memories of them. I remember I did a few things with Pete. Pete was a great talent. And he just got better and better and better. I was very shocked that he was released. I thought he was definitely someone that could go somewhere in the business, definitely, because he just seemed to improve every week. And I really don't have a whole lot of memories with Mean Street Posse.
Wow, and I think at one point you were able to do the IWA Tag Team Tournament during your WWE run. Am I right that you went down to IWA for like a shot or two?
Yes, I did go down, but it was just a singles thing with Shane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How did the offices work that out, or was that something that you asked to do, or?
Yeah, Victor Quinones arranged it, and the office, let me go down there and work with it. So yeah, it worked for the IWA with Victor. I mean, Victor was the guy that got me into Mexico at the time, and between him and Miguel, those guys are great. I mean, they really were my key to unlocking different territories, and Mexico was a huge territory that they unlocked for me. So,
what are your memories of your series of match with Rikishi?
Oh, Rikishi has got to be one of the most talented guys I've ever worked when it comes to working. He was the guy that you would never feel in the ring. I mean, literally. I mean, I work snug. I don't think I work unsafe, but I like to work snug. Rikishi is a guy that would be feather light, and to each his own. The one aspect I don't like about being feather light is I like to feel a little something that I can sell off of. Rikishi was a little bit lighter than I would definitely like, but it was amazing when I watched back. Everything Rikishi did looked rock solid. And another one is Umaga. Umaga's like that. You never feel Umaga. Everything he does looks so crisp and so rock solid. I mean, they're absolutely amazing talent. I don't know what if it's in their water, Samoan water, or what it is, but these guys are just, to work with them, you could work until you're 100 years old and beyond. And I mean, and still everything would look good. I mean, they're just amazing talents. And I remember when Rikishi came off the top of that cage and splashed me, I remember laying there in fear. And it was solid. It was no, I mean, you can't help but that being real solid.
Yeah.
And actually, I would even say that was on a level of stiff, but it was much safer than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And that's all Rikishi. And so that's just a testament to the kind of talent that man possesses.
Wow. Were you hesitant at first when you heard about the spot?
I'm not hesitant to try anything, but it was something that I was prepared to go to the hospital afterwards. It was something I prepared myself mentally for in case. It's something that you don't know. I mean, as he's coming down, his foot could slip at the last second. You just don't know. There's so many factors that you just can't control, and you just gotta hope for the best.
Yeah.
But with Rikishi there and the amount of talent that guy has, I mean, I couldn't have done it with anyone safer than Rikishi.
Huh. I think you wrestled Chyna a couple of times too, like in mixed tags or something. What are your memories of wrestling with Chyna?
I wrestled her in singles as well.
Oh, did you?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I had her beat with my fisherman suplex, and that's when Triple H came in and gave me the old NAD shot, and Chyna beat me. I always thought Chyna was real cool. Now, I heard she had problems after she left WWE, but I had a really good time working with Chyna. I gave her a pile driver, which she took like a champ in the middle of the ring. And I had a really good time working with Chyna.
Did you have any problems? Because I know you talk a lot, especially in the early part of the interview, about the psychology aspect of the business. Did you have any problems selling for a woman, so to speak?
No, absolutely not. If it's done right, I'm a big fan of it. And, for example, if a woman just comes off the ropes and clotheslines me, I'm not going to take a bump.
Yeah.
It might take 3 clotheslines, a drop kick to the knee, and then a drop kick to the head before I'll go down. But if it's done right, it can be done, But I mean, there are some guys that will take 1 drop kick to the head and take a bump. And to me, that's just like, whoa, what, huh?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, put some psychology into this. Let's make it. I mean, you don't go to a movie and watch Arnold Schwarzenegger blow a car up, yet if you see the guy set up the explosives in the movie, you're going to go, huh? You just want to see the car blow up and look as real as possible. And it's the same thing with professional wrestling. We want things to look as real as possible. I think that's where psychology comes in. If you got this, 5'3", 90-pound soaking wet little girl, and she's drop kicking a guy that's 6'4", 270 pounds, it just doesn't make sense for the guy to go down. I mean, let's attack the knees first, at least. So, I think if it's done right and the psychology's done right, it can be done.
Wow. I think it was earlier, mid-2000, you kind of dropped the whole porn star aspect of your character. Was that your idea, or was that the office's idea?
It wasn't my idea. I can tell you that right now. No, it was the office. I guess the office was getting heat from the Parental Television Council. And so I think with the switch of networks and the new network saying, we want you to tone it down a little bit, which means Godfather and Val Venis. And so I think with the PTC, along with the switching in networks and the networks saying, hey, tone it down, I think that was the pulling the plug on the Val Venis character for a little while.
Yeah. How much input did you have, like, on angles and storylines? Could you walk up to, if you had an idea, walk up to somebody on the writing team and say, hey, I think this would be a great angle or a great idea?
Yeah, you could always go up to the writing team and present angles and present storyline ideas. Now, I didn't know the writers too well. It was the writers, to me, and I could be totally wrong, but this is the impression that I got of the writing team. And it was that if it wasn't their idea, they would blow the smoke and say, "Oh yeah, that's a fantastic idea," and nothing would ever come of it, and it would never be presented at a production meeting because it wasn't their idea. That's the impression I got. Now, whether that's actually factual or not, I have no clue. Stephanie was the only the real writer I could go to and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And she would actually sit down and, say, "Hey, yeah, what if we did this?" She got excited about stories.
Yeah.
The other writers would blow the smoke and, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea." And then the next week, you just never hear anything of it. I mean, it just, if it's not their idea, then it's no good. Now, I know there are other guys that have came to other writers and given storyline ideas, and it's come to fruition. So the impression I got with what I was talking about, that's the way I felt. I felt like if it wasn't their idea, that it wasn't worth it. The only person I could really talk to about storyline ideas was Stephanie.
Yeah. Did you like working with her on different storyline ideas and angles and things? Or
Stephanie's great. I mean, she gets a lot of heat, from the boys and stuff about, being a writer, and she's never wrestled, never tied up the boots, whatever, but she's got passion for the business, just like her husband Paul has, and it's when somebody has that, and I believe that's what the difference is between Stephanie and the other writers. The other writers may not be huge wrestling fans. They may not have the passion for the business, and that may be the issue. Stephanie has a passion for the business. There's no question about that. And I will give Stephanie that. She is passionate about professional wrestling, and that is what makes people successful in whatever in whatever it is they desire. Vince is passionate about wrestling. He had a desire to build a wrestling company, and he used that passion to build a wrestling company. Stephanie is passionate about writing storylines for professional wrestling, and she does a very good job at it. The other writers, on the other hand, now Michael Hayes, don't let me leave out Michael Hayes. I mean, that's a guy that's passionate about writing as well for professional wrestling. So yeah, I would put Michael Hayes in the same category as Stephanie. But the other writers that just come in, I mean, you can't, I don't know, if it's not their idea, the storyline goes by the wayside.
Wow. What are your memories of the right to censor angle?
I was never a big fan of the right to censor. I thought it was good for what it was. We were just trying to, take shots and needle the PTC. But number one, I sweat like crazy. And to be wrestling in long cotton pants and a dress shirt with a tie, I mean, they would just get soaked every single. It was hard to breathe in those clothes. I was never a big fan of the RTC.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on working with Stevie and Ivory?
Stevie's awesome. Just an amazing talent. I mean, that's a guy that's not only passionate about the business, which is amazing. He's very, very talented. When WWE let Stevie go, I think they really missed the boat on him. That's a guy that can not only go, but has the passion to go, and he's talented. Hands down, he's talented. Ivory's another one. Ivory was someone that just wanted to keep learning, and it was a lot of fun working with those two.
So I guess you weren't sad when the angle was dropped pretty quickly.
No, one thing I was sad about was that I wasn't going to work with Stevie on a regular basis. And like I said, Stevie was awesome to work with.
Yeah.
Having the opportunity to work with somebody as passionate as Stevie is just amazing. And he's truly passionate about the business.
Wow. Now, you brought up his name earlier, Mr. Perfect. He came back at the Rumble, and then he stayed around for a little while, and I think you might have wrestled him a couple of times, maybe on Heat or something. Yes. What are your memories of wrestling Mr. Perfect?
Oh, it was amazing because he's a guy that I watched before, especially when I was in England.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys that I was like, man, that's a guy I'd like to be like, And then when I got to meet him, it was really cool the first couple of times I met him, And then once I got to know him, you kind of settle in as friends, and you just become like regular guys, and that mystique kind of goes away. But it never takes away from his in-ring wrestling ability. I mean, he was, in my eyes, he was amazing.
Wow. Was he one of the first guys up there in the WWE that you worked with, somebody that you were a fan of growing up and got a chance? Because it seemed like when you were in WWE, it was all young guys and kind of all at the same level, more or less.
Like, can you repeat that question again?
Like working with Mr. Perfect, was he the first guy in the WWE that you got to work with? A guy that you grew up watching, that you kind of, like you just said, like, wow, I get to, wrestle somebody that I grew up watching, big fan of.
Yeah. He's definitely one of the first guys that I grew up watching that I got to work with in the WWE. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. And I remember when I first got the opportunity to work him, it was because at the time I really didn't know him. I just met him, and so I was still kind of in awe at the time, and it was amazing. It was really, really amazing.
Wow. So how did you find out that Vince bought WCW?
Oh, how did I find out? That's a good question. I think, I can't recall exactly when I found it or how. I think it was the week before, but I could be wrong. It might have been a few days before, but whatever it was, I remember that Raw when they were going to do the simulcast. I remember Test and A-Train and Edge and Christian were all standing there going, "This is unbelievable. There's no way they're doing this." And sure enough, they did it. And it was still like, even that day, as we were leading up to going live, it was still like, no, this can't be real. Like, this is shocking.
Yeah.
And then we saw some of the WCW guys come in, and it was, it took a while to grow on us. Like, it was an end of an era. It really was an end of an era.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask you next. Was there any kind of a test period, do you think, with the guys from your locker room accepting the WCW guys coming over?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I mean, yeah. I think for the main guys in WCW coming over, I don't think there was much of a test at all. Now, I know there were a lot of guys sent down to Cincinnati to work in HWA that were obviously being evaluated. And I was sent down there in order to work with some of these guys for, God, I guess about 6 or 7 months. And so those guys, those are about the mid-card guys and down in WCW that were, in Cincinnati being evaluated. But I think the main guys that came over, they were just pretty much accepted right in, yeah.
Wasn't there some kind of an incident like Buff Bagwell's first or second night where everybody stomped on him on a SmackDown taping?
Yeah, I wasn't there for that. I heard stories here and there about it, but I don't know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting to hear the full story on that.
What do you remember of Brock Lesnar?
Brock, I remember the very first time. This is when we were down in Cincinnati and we were working with the guys in HWA. And I remember we drove down to Louisville to do the OVW taping. And I remember Brock was down there training down in OVW, and I had to do something where I came running in and knock all the guys out of the ring, and then I shook Brock's hand. And I remember when I shook his hand for the very first time, it was like shaking concrete bricks. And, I mean, it was just so big and so strong, And
yeah.
It was like, I remember when I shook his hand specifically, it seared into my brain. I was going, holy crap, this guy could crush me. And I got to know Brock a little bit here and there. Not real well. He wasn't around a long time, so. But he seemed like a really nice guy, hardworking. I know he didn't like traveling that much. The traveling really started to wear on him, and that's something that he did not like. And that's a big part of the business, is traveling.
Yeah. Was there any kind of apprehension amongst the guys when Hogan, Hall, and Nash were coming in?
I didn't see any. That's not to say there wasn't any.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I look at those guys coming in, and the first thing that pops into my mind, 3 new guys to work with.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's going to be other guys that will go, oh, why do we need these guys? We already got these guys over here, But I was never like that. I was always like, 3 new guys to work with. And so I never really saw any apprehension from anyone else, but that's not to say there wasn't any.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on those 3 guys, memories of those 3 guys when they were in WWE?
Oh, Hogan's just a laid back character, He's just laid back and cool. You can, say, hey, what's going on? You can just shoot the shite with him all you want. Nash is another one. I mean, Nash, I didn't get to hang around with Nash a whole lot, but I remember a few times we hung out and just chilled out together a few times. And we were over in Australia one time, and Hall, it was Nash, Test, and myself went out in the patio of the hotel in Australia, and we just sat there and talked for a couple hours, and it was just cool. He was just a cool, laid-back guy, you know.
Yeah.
Scott Hall, I never got to know him. He came in for a very, very brief amount of time and left, and I never really got to know him.
Were you on that crazy plane ride back from overseas?
Which one?
Which one? The one. Oh, geez. I think Dustin Rhodes got on the speaker and started singing to his ex-wife on the speaker, and Flair was running around naked, and there was like a lawsuit involved and stuff.
Yeah, no, I wasn't on that flight. No.
Oh, okay.
I was not on that flight.
How did Triple H change with success?
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
Triple H was always cool, level-headed. You could always approach him. And this is going back to Stephanie as well. I mean, those two are perfect for each other. I mean, they have so much passion for the business. And the amount of passion that Triple H has, personally, I think he'd be a perfect guy to succeed Vince and take over the company, especially with him and Stephanie. One thing that I will say, whoever ends up running WWE when Vince decides he doesn't want to run it anymore has to have at least the same amount of passion as Vince does in order to keep it growing and keep it on a successful level. And in my eyes, the only two that are capable of doing that are Hunter and Stephanie. Shane, and I don't know Shane real well. Whenever I talk to Shane, we're always joking around. And so we never really talked anything. I never talked on a serious level with Shane. It was always just joking around with Shane. And so I never really got to see any passion from Shane in regards to professional wrestling. That's not to say he's not passionate about it. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
However, with Hunter and Stephanie, I mean, those two are very passionate about the business. And in my eyes right now, if I were to choose a successor to Vince, it would have to be those two.
Wow. Was it a weird time when Hunter was dating Stephanie and dating Chyna at the same time?
Yes, that was a weird time. Absolutely. I mean, it was awkward.
Yeah.
It was awkward. And I think Chyna, I could be wrong because I don't know what the situation is. I'm just letting you know what I saw. Okay. And what I saw was that Hunter and Chyna were on the outs anyways. And, but I know it took Chyna, it hurt Chyna. It really did hurt Chyna, which was, it was sad on one aspect, but on the other side, I could see Chyna's not as passionate about professional wrestling as Stephanie was. And Paul is passionate about professional wrestling. So just that fact alone, they were perfect for each other, you know, absolutely. Yeah. And so it was good to see on one hand, it was sad to see on the other.
Was it odd to see the cameras in the locker room when they were filming Beyond the Mat?
No, tell you the truth, I didn't even notice.
Huh.
I didn't even notice until Beyond the Mat came out. Because there's cameras around there all the time anyways.
Yeah.
You know, and so yeah, I didn't even notice. I saw myself in the back in the locker room in one of the scenes, and I don't even remember that. You know, and so, you know, because there's cameras in the locker room all the time anyways, you know, unless you stop and ask, hey, who are you with? I mean,
yeah,
you don't know.
Yeah. Did you notice after WCW was sold to Vince and it had been a while, did you notice a time where you kind of thought that Vince was maybe kind of laying back where he wasn't as aggressive as he was during the Monday Night Wars?
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that concerned me when Vince bought out WCW, is there was going to be a certain period of time where there was no more competition. And I'm a big believer in free markets and competition. To me, competition is a solution to all societal problems. And I was very concerned. Without competition, is everybody going to be involved in a storyline and remain in storylines? Are the storylines still going to be focused on with the same intensity as before? And I don't believe they maintained the same kind of level of excellence in their product as when there was competition and they were being forced to maintain a high level. we were pushing the envelope. We were shocking people. We were making them cry, making them laugh. It was a great time for the wrestling business to entertain fans. And I think with the loss of competition, and I don't care what anybody says, I think Vince McMahon on one side is thrilled that he won the war between WCW and WWE. And whether he wants to admit it or not, I think on the other side, he feels a void where there's no competition. There's nothing to drive him other than ratings. You know, and ratings can only drive you so far.
Yeah.
You need competition, and no matter how passionate you are about a certain business or about a certain storyline or about a certain idea, you have to have competition to drive you. There has to be something to drive someone. And Vince, I mean, he's already got all the money in the world that he needs to live his life comfortably. You know, he doesn't have to work again if he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get pretty bored pretty quick not working. And I think if he's already got all the money in the world that he can live his life comfortable, I mean, what else is there? He needs competition. He needs his competitive fix, and he is a very competitive person. So I think, yeah, he was very, very happy that he won the Monday Night Wars or the Wrestling Wars at the time. But I think there's whether he'll admit it or not, I don't know. But I definitely think that he's got a void, and that is the void of competition.
Mm-hmm. Some of the guys have talked on shoots, and we kind of throw this question out there. Do you think JBL and Bob Holly, to fans and I guess newsletters, they kind of have a reputation as being bullies? Do you see that, or do you think that's unwarranted?
No, I think Bradshaw's a bully.
Yeah. But
to me, Bradshaw's a bully in a good way. He's depends how you take him. To me, Bradshaw being a bully was funny because he really was loud and obnoxious, but it was funny. I mean, it was very entertaining. At least I found it entertaining. I'm sure other people would be insulted by it, but that's on them. That's not on Bradshaw. Bob was just an old school kind of guy. I mean, he'd a lot of people call Bob a bully. I don't think he was a bully. I like Bob. I had great matches with Bob. I got the opportunity to tag with Bob for a while. Bob and I rode together for quite a while. I like Bob a lot. He's a great guy. But he does have that old school mentality as well. I mean, he'll make you work inside that ring in order to get something. And Benoit was the same way. But Benoit would make you work in that ring. Some people would call that him being a bully.
Yeah.
That's on them.
Yeah. What happened to you at a gym in Australia? Did a piece of weight equipment fall on you or something?
Oh, that was in Canada.
Oh, Canada. Okay.
Yes, in Canada. I guess what had happened was a couple of years prior to the accident, the gym had flooded, and they had one of the old low row cable pulleys where the bench was bolted to the ground, but it was separate from the pulley machine.
Okay.
And it was also bolted to the ground. Well, it was a 300-pound stack on there. And so I'd worked my way up to the stack and got up to the 300-pound mark. As I'm pulling it back, I guess the bolts had rusted so bad they snapped. And so with the 300 pounds high up in the air, it came down faster than a hot knife through butter. Wham! Right down on my head.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And blood just started pooling out everywhere. I mean, I was knocked out for a few seconds. I remember my wife was upstairs doing cardio, and she saw it happen. And I remember hearing the snap, and then I remember opening my eyes and seeing my wife over top of the machine trying to help three other guys lift it off of me. And so however long it took my wife to come down from the cardio machine down to the weight machine is how long I was out for. So whether it was 10, 15 seconds, I don't know. But yeah, that was a bad accident.
Wow. Did you wind up pursuing a legal action with them, or?
It was my friend's gym, and I'm not, it's accidents are accidents. I'm not a big fan of suing.
Yeah.
And what happened is the gym owner came up to me a few days later, and he said, here's all my insurance information. And I said, what's this for? He goes, well, you're gonna sue my insurance company, right? And I went, no, I'm not gonna sue your insurance company. He goes, no. Sue my insurance company. They just raised my rates 3 years in a row, and I'm changing insurance companies anyway. So we went ahead and sued them and got a little bit of change out of it. Not a big amount, but I wasn't a big fan of suing. So
Yeah. How much time did you miss from that?
God, going on 8 months almost. It did a lot of damage to my neck.
Wow.
And so yeah, it was a bad accident.
It's got to be frustrating, at least mentally, to have an accident like that when you're a wrestler and you're at the top of your game, and getting hurt in the ring. Sometimes people say it's part of the game, but to get hurt out of the ring and miss your push in your spot.
Frustrating. It was very, very frustrating. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are your memories of the Chief of Staff gimmick?
I loved the Chief of Staff gimmick.
Yeah.
I had a great time working with the Dudleys, doing the Chief of Staff gimmick. Eric Bischoff. We had such a great time, and they ended it. They just pulled it out and made me returned me back to being Val Venis again. I really enjoyed the Chief of Staff gimmick.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Do you have any good stories about Eric Bischoff maybe doing any during your off camera?
Yes, I like Eric. Eric lives in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah,
and so he's a Valley of the Sun kind of guy, just like me. Mm-hmm. And I've always liked Eric. He's a really good guy. And I remember one time I was up in gorilla position because I was gonna be the next segment after Eric, and Eric was talking in the ring with someone else in there. I can't remember who else was in there, but I remember Mae Young was gonna run down there and do something to Eric. Eric was going to get in the corner. Mae Young was going to give Eric the Bronco Buster thing in the corner. And so Mae Young's up in gorilla position as well. And Mae Young turns to me, and we're listening to Eric talk on the microphone out in the ring. Mae Young turns to me and says, "Hey Val, come here." So I love Mae Young. She's great. And I go over and say, "What's up, May?" And she goes, "Look at this." And she opens her underwear. And she had gone and bought 3 cans of sardines and emptied them into her underwear. She goes, "I'm going to give Eric the Bronco Buster in the corner with these sardines. It's going to smell so bad." And I started dying. It was hilarious. So sure enough, she goes walking down to the ring and does a bunch of stuff to Eric. Eric ends up in the corner. She's Bronco busting him, and this camera goes right in on Eric's face, and Eric going, "Oh," just gagging. Oh, it was hilarious. That was the funniest thing ever that I've seen Mae Young do. Mae Young is a character. Let me tell you, she's tremendous. I love that lady.
We're just gonna. All right, cool. WWE. I believe you cut your hair at one point. You had long hair for a while there. Was that your decision? They make you cut the hair, or?
I had asked several times to cut my hair. I was getting tired of long hair, and so I'd asked several times. They kept saying no, and I kept asking, and they kept saying no, and I kept asking, and they kept saying no, and finally they just said, "Go ahead and cut it." And so I said, "Yeah, I won't ask twice."
What do you remember as teaming up with Lance Storm?
I think Lance and I had good chemistry. Lance is a great worker. Lance has got some vertical to him that is unbelievable. That guy can drop kick. I'm going to say 6'5", 7 foot. He could probably drop kick 8 foot guys if there was an 8 foot guy there from the drop kick. Myself, on the other hand, I was never the greatest guy to throw drop kicks. I'd throw them, but it was hit or miss. Sometimes I'd get up real high and get them perfect. Other times I'd get a kneecap. But it was never consistent, and it was never spectacular. And so every time Lance would be in the ring and he'd throw a drop kick, he'd tag me in. I'd say, "I'll show you how to throw a drop kick," and I'd throw it. And of course, he'd just sit there and laugh and show me up when I tag him back in. So I remember some matches we were throwing 5, 6, 7 drop kicks in a row, tagging each other in, shooting the guy off drop kick, tagging each other in, shooting the guy off drop kick. And he kept out drop kicking me. So that was kind of our little things. We'd have little drop kick competitions during our match. And of course he'd always win. But yeah, Lance was a good guy to work with. Absolutely. He's such a straight and narrow guy. He's just an all around good guy.
Yeah, he's pretty outspoken these days on his website. He does a lot of commentaries. Was he pretty outspoken back then?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he was outspoken back then. He had no qualms about telling me I was a lousy drop kicker.
Were you disappointed when that angle ended with him?
Yes, absolutely. I thought we could have done a lot of funny things. Again, it goes back to approaching the writers with storylines that would have been a lot of fun to do. And of course, most of the writers would be, "Oh yeah, that's tremendous," and then next week, "Oh, we didn't have time to talk about it in the production meeting this week." And so it was one of those things that just we weren't on their radar. And so it was kind of frustrating.
Was it frustrating for you? I probably already know the answer. After that angle, you really weren't used in the high profile matches where you were just months before in the chief of staff gimmick.
Yeah, it really was frustrating. And it was something that I kind of got pushed into a position where I'd be working with the younger guys on the house shows, which I didn't mind doing at all. I remember Hunter once said, "Hey, we'll let Val work with him for a couple of weeks, and if everything's okay, then we'll bring him off and see how he does." And I mean, there was Chris Masters, there was Bobby Lashley, there was what was his name, Muhammad. It was a bunch of guys that I worked with for several weeks, sometimes months on the house shows before they started on TV. And so I was kind of put in that position to work with the young guys on the house shows, and the office would always pull me aside. "So what do you think of this guy?" And I didn't mind doing that. It was enjoyable, but there's still that deep-seated desire to actually want to be in a top spot again. And so even though I enjoyed working with the young guys that were just coming in, and it was a lot of fun, there's still that deep-seated desire to want to be involved in storylines and be shocking people and be making people laugh and cry. And so definitely it was frustrating.
Yeah. At any time during that period, whenever there would be a rash of cuts, guys getting cut, did you ever fear for your job since you weren't in a top spot?
No. Yeah, to me, it didn't matter. I knew I could perform no matter where I was working. Of course, the first several years in WWE, that's exactly where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, as long as I can perform, I'm happy. I love going out there and performing. And, to me, it doesn't matter whether it's in WWE or in Japan or in Mexico or in Puerto Rico. If I'm performing, I'm happy. And I think the novelty of being in the WWE is kind of gone. Of course, being back in the WWE is something that's, that's the epitome. You get to perform 4 nights a week, every single week. Whereas now in Puerto Rico, from what I'm hearing, they're running 2 nights a week, maybe. And so it's definitely WWE is the place to be if you want to perform, all the time, which is something I would definitely love to do. But as long as I'm performing, I'm happy.
Yeah, and you got to team up with Big Vis for a little while. Memories teaming with Viscera.
Yes. Viscera was a lot of fun to work with. He was, what can you say about Viscera? Viscera is just Viscera.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just cool, laid back. He was a lot of fun to work with. He was another guy that I would put not on the same level as Rikishi and Umaga, because he never really did a lot of spectacular things like Rikishi or Umaga could do. But the things he did do, he did well, and he did professionally.
Mm-hmm.
He was very much a professional.
Yeah. Memories of wrestling Shawn Michaels.
I never got the chance to wrestle.
You never wrestled Shawn Michaels?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's one of my disappointments was I never got to wrestle Shawn Michaels.
Did you ever get to team with him in any 6-mans or anything?
No, I got to take a super kick from him.
That
was pretty much about it.
Oh, okay. I think you and Vis wrestled Big Show and Kane. Did you guys have some matches with them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Big Show and Kane are always great to work with. I mean, Big Show he's just fun, Kane is intense, and he's a guy that when you get in the ring with him, you're never gonna, the fans are never gonna leave disappointed.
Yeah. We just interviewed Snitsky, like 2-3 weeks ago, and he was saying about those guys that he liked wrestling with them, but they're kind of Big Show anyway. He's kind of stuck in his own way, and he's got his own idea of what the match should be, and there's not really much room to improvise, so to speak.
I don't know. I I can't concur with that.
Mm.
And I think the reason may be because I was on that same page as Big Show. I mean, Big Show's a big guy.
Yeah.
And it goes back to psychology again. I'm the little guy. So if I drop kick him in the head, he's not going to go down.
Yeah.
And if he went down, I'd be real disappointed.
Yeah.
You know, and for example, I remember working with Big Show one night, and in the beginning of the match, we'd get up and I'd look up at him. We'd go eye to eye as you can get. And we'd just be sitting there staring. And all of a sudden I'd start firing up and I'd punch him. Bam. And he'd sell, but he wouldn't sell. He'd register it and look at me. And I'd look at him and I'd punch him again. Boom. You know, he'd look. Damn, I'd punch him again. Boom. And he'd register and look back at me again. Then I'd rapid fire punch him. I'd go boom, 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 boom. And he'd register, and just look at me. And I'd go, rah, and I'd hit the ropes, charge him as hard as I could with a clothesline. Boom, and I'd bounce off of him. And he'd just sit there and go, ah. So I'd hit the ropes again and just as hard as I could. Like, I mean, with Big Show, I could be as stiff as I wanted with things like clotheslines and stuff because he wouldn't feel me. And so I'd wham as hard as I could with another second clothesline. He'd go, boom, rah, and I'd go like this. Bam, and he would sell the crap out of the eye poke.
That's great.
And the entire arena would just go, ah, that's great. And of course, while he's selling that, now I start attacking his knee. Psychology, you know? Whereas I think a lot of people are expecting, hey, Big Show, if I come off the top rope with a drop kick, you should go down.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know?
And at one point, did you have a nerve transplanted in your elbow or something, some kind of surgery?
I had surgery on both my elbows.
Okay.
I had all the chips and things cleaned out of my elbows. My shoulder last year, I tore every ligament clean off the bone of my shoulder. So I've got...
How'd you do that?
Oh, you know, the doctor said years of just heavy lifting behind the neck, doing behind the neck presses, frayed all the tendons. And when I was over in Europe, I took a bump, my shoulder popped out, and then popped right back in again. And it's never happened before. And then ever since then, I just couldn't lift my right arm. It was just dead. And so we got back to Phoenix, and I still wrestled another week and a half in Europe. I just didn't use my right arm. Just everything was left arm.
Yeah.
And got back to Phoenix, got the MRI, and sure enough, the rotor cuff's torn, all the tendons are torn, cleaning out the bones. So we had to go in there and get all the frayed part of the tendon cut off, and then have the good part pulled back up and anchored into the bones, have the rotor cuff sewed up, and then I went about a little less than a year of rehab before I was ready to go again.
Wow. I mean, I think you were doing web segments during that time. Were you doing stuff on WWE.com?
No. I was just doing political stuff on my site, yeah.
Oh, okay. Didn't you have some kind of a segment on WWE.com for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, we did, what was it, Sex University?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a few episodes of that. It was just, a few episodes, just something fun to do.
Yeah.
And it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. You were talking about some of the different writers and throwing out some names before. Paul Heyman, thoughts on Paul?
I never got to know Paul all that well. I do know that is one guy that is on the same level as Paul or as Hunter and Stephanie. Very, very passionate. In fact, I think his passion gets him in trouble sometimes. But yeah, I never got to know him real well. But the times I did spend with him, I mean, he seems like a very, very knowledgeable guy. A guy I could definitely learn a lot from. And that's definitely somebody I would like to work with in the future.
How about Dave Lagana?
I didn't get to know Dave that well. Now, from what I understand, Dave's getting involved in a lot of politics now.
Okay.
That's just what I've heard. I don't know that for a fact. So I may be getting in touch with him in the near future. But yeah, I didn't get to know him all that well.
There are some guys that never had the chance to achieve the success you have in the WWE, and they say there's a glass ceiling in the WWE and you can only get so far. Do you agree with that, or do you think that you make your own way there?
That's a tough question. I think a glass ceiling, and I think there is a glass ceiling for guys that could never make it as main eventers. I definitely think that there's a glass ceiling there for those guys, and rightfully so. I mean, you're not gonna put someone in there with a main eventer that's not going to draw a dime. That's just business. It's just the way it is. But as far as, I don't think there's anything stopping someone from acquiring the knowledge, the skill, and the talent to break through that glass ceiling. It is just glass after all.
Yeah. Brian Gerwitz, he's another writer. Any thoughts on Brian?
I think Brian's a great writer. I don't think he's passionate about professional wrestling. I think his writing ability is good. But I don't think he's passionate about the business. And I think that's something that is detrimental to the WWE. I mean, if you don't have writers that are passionate about the business, I think it does more harm than good.
Are you still involved with breezatrips.com? Was it breezatrips.com or breezatrips.com?
Yeah, that's my wife's site.
Okay.
Now, she took it down there a couple of weeks ago. I guess she's redoing it. She's changing some HTML stuff around and stuff. But yeah, she's doing a travel site. And yeah, I'm supporting her 110% on that.
Okay, yeah, because I saw your endorsements on the website. I didn't know if that was your business or...
No, that's my wife. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Was it a little frustrating to be in so many dark matches at WrestleMania over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, you always want to be on WrestleMania, And yeah, so that was definitely frustrating. And I remember the one time we were working with the Dudleys, and this is as Chief Morley, and we were supposed to be, as Lance Storm and I against the Dudleys, were supposed to be on WrestleMania, and because whatever they were, the beer chicks, whatever the highlight chicks or whatever they were, the beer chicks were demanding a segment, and so they pushed us off into the dark match of WrestleMania, and the Dudleys. I didn't know this until after the fact, but the Dudleys really fought hard in order to make sure that we got our pay for WrestleMania. And so, yeah, kudos to the Dudleys for that one. But that was frustrating because we were all so excited. I mean, the Dudleys, Lance Storm, and myself, we were excited to be on that card. And getting pushed off of it because of some beer chicks, beer bikini chicks, was frustrating as hell.
Yeah. Thoughts on that unfortunate Chris Benoit tragedy? We've asked a lot of guys that have worked with Chris and were there at the time. What are your thoughts on?
Chris was a good friend of mine. And he was one of the best in the business, man. There's no question about that. He was definitely one of the best in the business. That guy had passion like no other. I mean, he was unbelievable inside that ring. There's a lot of theories about, roid rage and all that crap. Well, we'll talk about Chris Benoit, and then I'll talk about my disappointment in mainstream media with that. Chris to me was he was one of the best guys in the locker room. I mean, he was not only inspirational, he was intense, he was focused, he was passionate, he was one of the best workers in the world, without a question. He was definitely one of the best workers in the world. However, I think what he did at the end of his life completely nullified his status as one of the greatest in the world of professional wrestling. I just, to me, it sickens me to see that Chris Benoit was such a coward. And it's hard for me to say that. I feel my throat tightening up when I say that Chris Benoit was a coward, because when I knew Chris, he wasn't a coward. Now, am I misunderstanding where Chris was coming from? I mean, I understand that he was real passionate about professional wrestling. He was real passionate about his family. Maybe the passion got to him too much. Maybe he was too passionate, but it was sickening and it was cowardly. Do I think it was roid rage? No, absolutely not. My personal belief, what happened was, I think Nancy and Chris got into a huge argument. They started to fight. I think he choked her out. I don't think he meant to kill her. I think apparently they were both drunk. There was open beer bottles and wine bottles everywhere. So I think they were both smashed. I think he put his arm around her neck and, choked her out. I think she passed out. And of course, he thinks, oh, she'll wake up in a couple of seconds. She doesn't wake up. She's dead. I think he starts to unwind. If it was roid rage, she would have bruises and cuts all over her. His son would have been dead right after his mother was dead, or Chris's wife was dead. That didn't happen. I think he choked her out. She passed out, and he couldn't revive her. And then I think he just became unhinged. this is where Chris became a coward to me, because rather than to stand up and accept what you just did and face the consequences, he decided to take his son out and then hang himself so he doesn't have to face the consequences. And to me, that's just cowardly and it's sickening. And I just don't think, I have no respect for Chris. All the respect and he was one of the guys I respected the most in this business, and that's just completely gone. And it's not because of what I think may have been an accidental death. Regardless, it's still manslaughter. Whether it was murder or manslaughter, it's still wrong. But the fact he decided he didn't want to face the consequences and decided to take out his son as well, to me, that's just cowardly. And he has no respect for me whatsoever.
And you were going to say something about the mainstream media?
I've always been weary with mainstream media, but with the Chris Benoit story, it really showed how backward mainstream media really is and how much of a ratings whores they are. Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly all come out as, we're not ratings whores, we just tell the truth. And these guys are just as much rating whores as the people on CNN or MSNBC, anything to inflame a story. And, the roid rage, that is what is shocking to people. That's what will get the viewers watching and the ratings higher. You just look at the evidence. It cannot be roid rage. There would have been bruises all over Nancy. There would have been cuts all over her. The son would have been dead right afterwards. There was no roid rage involved. And they completely ignore the fact that there was empty beer bottles and empty wine bottles all over the place. And that alcohol was a huge factor in what happened. And for them to kind of take a look at the evidence to see what happened and to watch mainstream media ignore the facts and run with something that is complete theory, and just because it's a ratings grabber is very, very disappointing, and that really turned me off mainstream media.
Were you contacted at all by anybody in the media? Asked to talk?
No, there was a couple of messages on my phone to call them back, and I just had no desire to call them back.
Yeah. Moving on, I know you've been, I don't want to say outspoken, but you've been very public with your political views, and it seems like you have a passion for politics, at least from what I've read about you.
I don't have a passion for politics. I have a passion for freedom and liberty.
Okay. When Jesse Ventura came in a couple of times to make some appearances, did you ever sit down with Jesse and talk politics? Because he has a lot of those same passions.
No, I never got a chance to sit down with Jesse. I don't think Jesse's a principled libertarian at all. Jesse is, I think he has some libertarian views, but he's still a statist. He still believes that government is good to solve some societal ills, and I'm totally against that. And anytime Jesse wants to sit down and debate with the big Valboski, the door is always open.
Yeah. Do you want to get into some more talk radio or anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. I think the movement within the freedom organizations is starting to gather steam. Free Talk Live is one of my favorite talk shows. Two guys up in New Hampshire by the name of Ian and Mark are the main host. Ian being the main host, Mark being the main co-host. They have other co-hosts on there that rotate in and out, but Ian and Mark are the two main ones. They're two young guys that are passionate about true freedom and true liberty. Their show is growing by leaps and bounds. It seems like every week they're having a new syndicate join their show. So I think they're in over 60 or 70 markets now. And they've only been going 4, 5, 6 years now, I guess. And they're with the Free State Project. Kane is part of the Free State Project up in New Hampshire. So the freedom movement's growing. It's growing steam. The Ron Paul campaign is a prime example of people tired of oppressive and tyrannical governments.
Some of the fans may know, some of the fans may not know. For a while, Edge was married to your sister.
Yes.
And was there any kind of heat between the two of you guys when the two of them started dating, or?
No. They knew each other from when we first started wrestling anyways. And, it worked out. They started dating, then they got married, and they moved from the Bahamas into Florida, and, they were married for a few years, but they were both stubborn more than anything. They're both stubborn in the head. They're on that same level of stubbornness. So I knew there was going to be button heads. And so they butted heads, and they ended up getting divorced. And but it wasn't a brutal divorce, and I think Edge kind of understands that. Well, it could have been a lot worse than it was. And I mean, they're friends now. I mean, they talk every once in a while. They say, "Hey, what's going on?" They call each other up, say, "Hey, what's going on?" Blah blah blah. But yeah, it is what it is. You know, to me, Edge is a great guy. Very passionate about the business. He's a straight and narrow guy. There's no question about that. Now, Edge and I were two different people when it came to music, and that's one of the reasons why I hung around Test and A-Train, because we were into hip hop and he was into rock and roll. One thing I will give Edge though is he's a walking music encyclopedia. I remember one time I was in a gym, and it was somewhere in Illinois, and I heard a song, and I've never been too much of a music guy. Like, I don't know the names of bands that sing certain songs. You know, I just know the song. I've heard it on the radio. I like it, and that's it. And I heard a song in the gym that was being played on the radio, and so I said, "Man, I want to get this CD. I got to find out who sings it." So I went over to Edge. I said, "Hey, Adam, man, you know who sings this?" And Adam went on to tell me not only the name of the singer, but the singer's parents' names, where they were born, what preschool, secondary school, high school, college you went to. I mean, I'm just standing like, I just want to know the name of the guy that sings it so I can get the CD. So yeah, he's a walking encyclopedia for music. There's no question about that.
Wow. So there wasn't any tension between the two when it didn't work out between them? No. I mean, I understood. They were both button heads, you know, and I never told the two to get married. They're both adults. Yeah. And, you know, I love my sister and I love Edge, you know, and we got along really, really well. And yeah, it is what it is. And I mean, everything worked out in the end. I mean, my sister's married now. She's got 2 kids with a new husband. Her new husband's great, and her and Edge are friends. So yeah, it worked out well. Do you think the whole thing between him and Matt and Amy, do you think it was a work?
No, that definitely was not a work. Believe me.
What do you remember about that time period?
I just remember being in shock. I remember going like, "Edge, what the hell are you thinking?" And yeah, it was. But I will say this: I will give them kudos. They turned something that could have been and really was nasty into a moneymaker, and they both made money on it. So yeah, I mean, they made money off of life's grievances. So
yeah. How did your tenure with the WWE come to an end?
Well, it seemed like every time I went back to the doctor to see if I could get approval to go back, it seemed like, come back in another 3 or 4 weeks and we'll reevaluate you again. And so this went on for 3 or 4 months. And they told me it could take up to a year before I get released, get a doctor's release. But I was figuring, 6, 7 months. So at 6-month mark, I was feeling okay. I was nowhere near ready I was feeling okay to start working out again. Even though I was told not to. I was told not to work out until the 9th month. But it just seemed like every time I'd go back to the doctors, no, don't start lifting weights yet. Don't stop lifting. And I started getting more and more frustrated. And then I remember in January, Johnny Ace calls me up. I remember hearing in December, Linda McMahon on Fox News saying they're going to cut $20 million out of the budget. And they were cutting $20 million of the budget because of the recession, the downturn. I mean, every company was doing it. I mean, it was just so at that point, I kind of figured, wow, $20 million is a lot to cut out of the budget. I mean, that's a lot to cut out. So I was kind of expecting it, but didn't really think much of it. I was just kind of, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So that was in December. And then January 9th, I get the call from Johnny Ace, and he says, we're going to exercise our 90 days. And I said, okay, gotcha.
Wow. What was the injury that you had?
Well, that's where I tore every ligament in my shoulder.
Oh, that was the shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And when did you finally get cleared to at least start working out again? And
I got cleared right before I went to Japan to start working out.
Wow.
And so that was difficult because I was way out of shape because I couldn't work out. I couldn't lift any weights. It was in the worst shape that I've been in since since I started lifting weights when I was 14 years old. So it was real frustrating. And but in Japan they took care of me. I did a lot of 6-mans and tags, so I just took it real easy with the shoulder. I'm still only about 50% where I was, but now I'm getting to the point where I can start pushing as hard as I want. So a few more weeks and I should be right back where I was.
Wow. Do you have any interest in going to TNA?
Never say never.
Yeah.
Like I said, as long as I'm performing, I'm happy. New Japan is tremendous. I love working over there. Some of the guys over there are just amazing. Plus, A-Train's over there, Giant Bernard.
Yeah.
And so, he's one of my best friends. So, it's a lot of fun being over there. And then, of course, we'll do independence on my time off. So, yeah, I mean, if we do something with TNA in the future, then, yeah, that'd be great. But, yeah, I'm happy right now just being able to work in Japan and do some independence around here, yeah.
Do you think that they could compete with WWE at some point? Or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Never say never. I think it's a matter of getting one head on that monster. I mean, if you have a company with more than one head, you truly have a monster. So you got to cut one head off. There's got to be a head. There's got to be somebody there with a vision. I think Jeff Jarrett has that vision. But and like I said, I don't know how they work. I don't understand. I've never been to TNA. So I'm not exactly sure what their procedures are and how they organize their company, but I do know. And it's the same thing with a marriage. If you don't have one head, you have a monster, and monsters lead to disasters.
Wow. Now, Missy Hyatt has dropped your name a few times over the last couple of years. I don't know if you've heard any of what she said. Have you, or?
Just in her book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess she brings it up in radio interviews as a result of the book.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What's she say on the radios?
She questions your manhood, so to speak. What are your thoughts on Missy?
I met Missy in New York. She seemed really cool. I didn't get to know her that well.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in Madison Square Gardens, I was in the ring. I just walked out to the ring and I looked out and she stood up in the audience and she stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I just kind of looked at her and I went, I think that's Missy Hyatt. And I went, hey. And then, yeah, I mean, like I said, I never really got to know her all that well.
Yeah.
I met her at an autograph session and I saw her that one time from the ring. And, yeah, I never got to know her too well.
Were you surprised that you made it into her book?
I actually didn't know I made it into her book until about a year after it came out. And actually, no, maybe that's a little long. Maybe about 7 or 8 months after it came out is when I was told that I made it into her book. I was like, wow, what the hell is this? Trying to bury the Val Venis character. Make it happen, baby.
Does your brother still wrestle?
Yeah, he does independence every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sure does.
Wow. Any good road stories that come to mind from anywhere? WWE?
Oh, God. Road stories I got to take the Fifth Amendment to.
How about one good one you could share?
One good one. Well, let's see. One good road story. Oh, well, here's a good road story. My old tag team partner, Shane, working in Puerto Rico. And I'm going to tell you even a better story. Actually, they're both really good, but that one's a little long, so I'll tell you this one. Al Snow. This was when this is the beginning of my career in WWE. And Al Snow was doing the kidnap Pepper gimmick with the Boss Man. And it was Monday Night Raw. During the daytime, I remember we're in the arena, inside the arena. And I came around the corner to go into the locker room, and I could see down the hallway, I saw Al with Vince Russo and a couple of cameras, and I heard him say, "It's Val's." So I stopped and I turned. I said, "Hey, Al, what's mine?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing. I was just talking about whatever, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I didn't think twice of it. And I went inside the locker room. And so the hours goes on by, and gets to be showtime. And I go out there and I do my match, and I come back into the locker room after my match, and we have a monitor in our locker room. And while I'm in the locker room after my match, Al's vignette is playing. And it's the vignette he was taping when I called him down the hallway earlier. And so I was kind of watching it for a couple of seconds, and he's talking about losing Pepper and all that. And so I start getting unchanged. And then I'm kind of half paying attention to the monitor, and then I'm kind of half not. And as I'm getting changed, I hear my cell phone ring. And so I pick my cell phone up and I go, "Hello." And they go, "Hey, man, I found Pepper." And I'm going, "What? Who is this?" No. Hey, man, I found Pepper. Isn't this who I call if I find Pepper? And I'm going, "All right, buddy. Hey, listen, if you're not going to tell me who this is, then piss off." "No, but you don't understand. I'm supposed to call you for Pepper." I said, "All right, bye." Click, and I hung up. And before I could put my phone back in my bag, it rang again. And I went, what the hell? How do you call back that fast? Hello? Hi, is this the number we called if we found Pepper? I'm like, what? Who the hell is this? And then I understand, because I'm listening, the entire locker room is dead silence. And I look up and everybody busts out laughing. Well, that vignette that Al had just taped down the hallway that just aired live on TV, he held up my cell phone number live on Raw. Sabu, what's going on, dog? What's going on, buddy? Good to see you, man. Heck yeah, how you been?
Could be better. Could be better.
Heck yeah, you're me on that one. Me too.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no big deal, dude.
Good seeing you, brother.
Heck yeah.
Tabu. Good to see you.
Hey,
How's it going, man?
You gonna crash out, or you gonna hang out a little while,
I'll
or
hang out a little bit.
you gonna hang out like up here?
No, he's going down. You're gonna go downstairs for a little bit, then you're gonna. What do you want to do?
I don't know. Where are you going?
Oh, I didn't know I was gonna do this, and then I didn't know what I was gonna do.
All right, go downstairs.
Go downstairs.
All right, I'll come downstairs a little bit. Talk to you in a little bit, buddy.
All right, brother.
So, so everybody's laughing, and then it was Al's vignette where he said, "If you find Pepper, please call this number." And he held my cell phone number live on Raw. So now my phone is ringing off the hook. I mean, nonstop. I mean, I could hit end and it would immediately ring again. And so I was like, "Oh, you bastards! Now I got to change my number." So it was a great rib.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm always one for a good rib. So I turned it off. I mean, that's all I could do. I just keep on ringing. So that was at the beginning of Raw. And so, I get changed and it was a good laugh, blah, blah, blah. So we watched the rest of Raw. And then A-Train and Test and I, we had to drive 4 hours to the next city after Raw. So this is 2 hours later. We get back into the car and we start driving to the next city. And about 15 or 20 minutes into the drive, Tess says, "Hey, are people still calling your phone?" And I said, "Actually, I don't know. I didn't turn it on yet." I turn it on as soon as it got reception. So my mailbox is full. People are still calling. And I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. So we have 4 hours, nothing to do. So we decide we're going to make or have a little fun with this. So every time the phone rings, we answer and we go, "Hi, you've just reached the Fine Pepper hotline and you've just won $10,000 to be presented to you next week live on Raw." And of course, the people are going, "Are you serious? I just won $10,000? And they'd be freaking out. And I said, "I'm going to pass you off to my colleague. He's going to take down your information and we're going to fly you into Raw next week live for $10,000. So I'd give it to A-Train and A-Train would be like, "All right, now you have to answer these questions." You have to answer these 3 questions. And so we would just start messing with people. And so it made the 4-hour drive go by real quick. Of course, the next day I had to get the phone line changed. But it was nonstop. Literally, I could, as soon as I hit end, it would ring again. So that's the power of television, right?
So you're going to be I guess you're going to do more independence now, that you're kind of back on the road and home in Japan and stuff. Are you looking forward to working with more younger guys, or would you rather work with more veterans? It
doesn't matter to me. The veterans are always great to work with because you just go in there and you can be playing cards up until 30 seconds before you go out and say, okay, and you go out there and put on a show. To work with the younger guys would be great too because that's where I think the passion will really come out. Yeah. And you can really pull a lot out of the new guys. So yeah, it's either way. Veterans, new guys, bring them all.
What do you think about Ric Flair going back into the ring?
It was such an emotional retirement. And there are a couple of different ways of looking at this. Obviously, he's got it in his blood. And I understand the fact he wants to wrestle again. And that's tremendous. However, if he does go back and wrestle again, I think it's going to it's going to ruin it for every other guy that wants to do a big retirement match. Because nobody's going to believe they're going to retire. And so you could look at it 2 ways. Yes, he's got a passion for the business. It's in his blood. I know he wants to get back in that ring, and all the more power to him. But at the same time, it's going to be devastating for guys that are really going to retire.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're back wrestling in Japan. You wrestle for New Japan
Yes.
Pro Wrestling. Was there ever any attempt to work for All Japan since you had roots there, or?
Well, because A-Train
Oh.
was in New Japan, it was an easy connection for me,
Yeah.
and he's one of my best friends. So to be able to go and work over there with him is awesome. Now, could I work with All Japan or with Noah? If New Japan hadn't worked out, it was a possibility. But I think I'm happy with New Japan. Hattori is he's just an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to wrestling. And so he's another guy I know I could definitely learn a lot from. That's one thing in this business. I mean, you're going to learn something new every day. And the second you feel like there's nothing else to learn, it's time to get out.
Yeah. What's the landscape like over there now as far as the wrestling scene as opposed to when you were there? Geez, what was it, 15, 16 years ago?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I think it's pretty much the same. It's the same style. I think there's a little more showmanship involved than there was before. But yeah, I think it's pretty much still the same style, the same kind of fans. I mean, it's tremendous over there. I love Japan.
Yeah. Is there? It seems like there are less American wrestlers working over there for the big companies these days.
Yes, there doesn't seem to be as many American wrestlers over there. That's definitely for sure. Why the number's been cut down, I don't know. Maybe because of the economy. I don't know, but there are definitely less Americans working over there.
Yeah. Do you have any desire to go back to the WWE somewhere down the line, or?
Oh yeah, I'd absolutely love to go back there for sure. I mean, to be able to perform 4 nights a week, every week, is tremendous. And like I said, if I'm performing, I'm happy. To be in WWE performing a guaranteed 4 nights a week every week throughout the year is great. But Japan's also great because you get to perform every single night for 3-4 weeks at a time. And so apples and oranges, they're both tremendous, and I'm happy either one.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Money Shot shirts, Money Shot t-shirts?
Oh, Money Shot Tees.
Yes. I see you advertising on your Facebook all the time.
Yes, moneyshottees.com. I was learning HTML and CSS. Did that on my time off. And so I decided I was going to create this t-shirt store on my own. So I downloaded a shopping cart called the Cube Cart and then just customized it with HTML and all that. It's very amateurish. But it's hey, it's what I did. I did. I learned it and I did it. So
yeah,
to me, it looks good. But what I really like doing is designing the t-shirts. And I design political t-shirts. I'm going to design funny t-shirts. So yeah, it's something I'm going to grow over time and build up. And it's a lot of fun just to do it on my free time. Flights over to Japan, I just sit there and just on my Apple computer just designing t-shirts. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
How's it been going so far?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, it's been consistent. I haven't done any paid advertising as of yet. I think I want to get at least 100 t-shirt designs up there before I start doing paid advertising. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just advertising on Facebook and on MySpace. But yeah, it's going really good.
Awesome. Do you ever have any aspirations to write a book?
Yes, I've actually have 3 books.
Do you really?
That I've been working on for the last couple of years.
Wow.
One is about the war on drugs. Another one is the right to bear arms. And another one is just all the different issues combined. It just goes through, it just touches on the liberty aspect on different issues. And the one I'm really focusing on right now is the main one where I just touch on every issue. And then once I get that one out, then I'll start writing books on just one issue at a time. So for example, the war on drugs one is just on the war on drugs. So that'll be one book. The one on gun control is just on the right to bear arms. That'll be just one book. But the first one will be a book that touches on many different important issues in American society.
Yeah. Do you own a lot of guns?
No.
No?
I don't own a lot of guns yet.
Okay. Okay.
Yet. 4 is not a lot. Kane owns a lot of guns. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of the right to bear arms. And it's something that I'll support until the day I die.
Do you ever want to run for office at some point?
Never say never.
Yeah.
But I think I would definitely have to create a massive following before I'd ever get elected. If I just went out and ran right now and ran on a principled platform, I don't think I'd ever get elected. I'm definitely going to have a dedicated following that understands the true aspects of freedom and liberty before I can garner enough support in order to, because if I ever got elected and had the power and the authority to really make change, Obama's changed the government. Obama hasn't changed anything other than speed up what's already been happening, and that's the growth of government.
Yeah.
But real change for me would be seeing government literally slashed massively back to its constitutional duties. There would be no Medicaid. There would be no Medicare. There would be no Social Security. There would be no federal welfare checks. There would be no Food and Drug Administration. There would be no FCC. Now that's massive change right there.
Yeah.
That's real change. That's real change that people can feel. There would be no form of federal direct taxation. There would be no corporate tax, inheritance tax, gift tax, estate tax, death tax. That'd be all gone, completely gone. You'd see a government completely shrunk down to the size that is required to carry out its constitutional duties and nothing more.
Yeah.
And the powers would be handed back to the states.
Wow. Well, as we wrap this up, we always offer our guests a chance to say something to their fans out there. So for all of your fans watching right now, do you have any messages you'd like to pass along?
Let's see. Trying to brainstorm here. Yeah, to all the fans that love professional wrestling, and to me, professional wrestling is one of the greatest forms of entertainment in the world today. There's no question about that. That's obviously everyone has their own opinion, but to me, it's one of the greatest forms of entertainment. That said, I would definitely like to see not just wrestling fans, but more Americans in general. But I'm just talking to wrestling fans right now. I'd like to see wrestling fans become more involved in politics, because just because you don't take an interest in politics does not mean politics will not take an interest in you. And it is taking an interest in you, and it's always going to take an interest in you, and it's going to continue to erode your freedom and liberties, and it's going to continue to plunder your wealth until you have no wealth left. And when it comes to buying wrestling tickets, that's impossible to do when you have no wealth left. That's why it's absolutely necessary. It's imperative that wrestling fans, not just in America, but around the world, get involved in politics and fight for freedom and liberty.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, buddy.